I got the moves.
We're live.
Oh man! Right after that,
You clicked record on everything. Everything's plugged.
I think so. Yes.
Perfect. Awesome. Just for clarifications, we did not plug one of our cameras in the episode before this. So if you notice which one it was, that'd be
don't
funny.
tell them.
Don't tell them. It'd be kind of fun. It's like Where's Waldo, except there's only 3 options.
Don't tell them this.
It's Where's Waldo, but
You're
with 3 people in
embarrassing
it.
me. You're embarrassing
Well, now
me
they
in
know
front
it's
of the
one of-
guests.
Well, now they know it's one of your camera.
Yeah, they're actually all my cameras. No, one's Nick's.
Yeah, one of them's mine.
Great. Welcome, guys. Another instant start that Nick didn't give me any chance to prepare for, but
Yep.
I guess we'll jump into it. We are talking about
Education and how to pick your
direction.
light education, but then like how to pick your direction is the main topic and meat and potatoes of this one.
Yeah, we want to help basically guide anyone out there who is considering this concept art thing or illustration thing or whatever thing. You want to be an artist, you want to get paid, you want to have a job, all that good stuff. We want to give you a little more insight in, like picking the education that's right for you. And also, deciding, okay, well, like what kind of artist do I want to be as well? Because there's different domains within the world of concept art and such.
And I just want to preface this by saying that when we're talking about this, we're talking about it from our experiences, what we've done, the people we've talked to. But it's possible that some people might have had different experiences. So it's always important that you source that information, especially when you're deciding your future. Talk to a few people about it to get a wide consensus. We all did. We talked to multiple teachers, multiple friends when we were making these decisions. We're just 2 people with our own experiences. So just keep in mind, there's a wide net out there of information to pick your career paths.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So, I guess the question on your mind might be, or at least I would if I was starting, like, oh man, I'm in high school, or maybe I want to leave my day job and do something with my art passion. I want to do something with it.
Yeah.
But there's a wilderness and a crazy land of, there's so many options out there to go to. What do I do? So, yeah, Nick, what would someone do?
There's options, and I think that's what makes it kind of hard. Basically, we have choices. You can learn yourself. You can be self-taught. Another option you can have is that you can go to a school. And the third option is you can do mentorships. Those I would say are the pretty big one. And the self-taught is a pretty wide spectrum. You can go and like just do some life drawing or draw outside. You can do some gum roads. So the variety of cost for self-taught can really range anywhere from 0, just watching YouTube videos, to maybe closer to 100, 150 if you're buying gum roads and learning from paid tutorials. But in general, that's like the cheaper of the 3 options. But you have self-taught, mentorships, and schools usually are the big 3 that people are looking at.
And hybrid. You can also, dabble in all 3.
We did, I think, dabble in all 3. Both
exactly.
Of us.
Yeah. To all the listeners, we me and Nick, we kind of have a bit of experience on both ends of all 3 of those things, being the teacher and the student.
I think they all excel at different parts in your journey more than others.
Exactly. Yeah. And we can get into that for sure.
Yeah. So I guess let's start with self-taught. Because self-taught is one that usually people most of the time will start with.
Especially now in this day and age, when you have a question, I don't know about you, but if let's say I have to make a new meal, I'll be like, YouTube, tell me what it is.
Google, YouTube,
But there is definitely drawbacks to that.
Huge drawbacks.
That some people don't know. And I think it's more of a modern day thing where it's like if I want to get good at something, go on YouTube kind of phenomena. Let's talk about that.
You can waste a lot of money doing self-taught. So there's the free
time.
stuff. You can waste a lot of time. You can waste a lot of money because there's the good free stuff, right? You go on YouTube, you look up videos, and that's really good. But you can also fall down this rabbit hole where you're buying gum roads. And I think we've all done it, where you start buying gum roads and you're like, this looks really cool, I want to learn that. This looks really cool, I want to learn that. And either the gum road was a little bit too advanced for your skill level, or just sat there and collected dust because you had another 17 gum roads you had to get through. And a gum road is basically a website where people can sell stuff. So people like sell tutorials and things like that.
It's one of the many domains that sell these very inexpensive pieces of education, usually a couple hours long. They vary in length.
You can go on ArtStation as well. There's an ArtStation marketplace. They have some there. So there's a few places that you can go to find it. Some people even have their own websites where they sell the tutorials there. But like you can go down this rabbit hole of just buying a ton of them and just never getting through them.
Just become a collector like I used to be. You're like, wow, that's great. And you just get hyped and you kind of go down the the shopper, what's it called? It's like the shopper's mentality where you get a kick out of buying it and collecting it all. But then when it comes down to doing it, you just have 50 and you're like, I don't know what to do.
Especially if you're early on, you're learning fundamentals and you're buying tutorials on like how to create these like crazy scenes in Blender and you're like photo bashing and it's like, you're still trying to learn perspective. It's like maybe buying that tutorial is not the time yet. Right? There's a lot more like important tutorials and things that will give you more bang for your buck, that will really help you out with fundamentals to get your skills where they need to be to do those more advanced tutorials that are out there. But you don't have a filter there for somebody to tell you. That's the big thing with self-taught. You're on your own.
You have to make these decisions yourself.
Yeah.
You have to guide yourself.
Yeah.
Which can be done.
Yes.
But
very hard.
I would say even if you're in that position where you're guiding yourself, there's so many unknowns.
Yeah.
Maybe we can segue that into the pros and cons of mentorships and teaching and schools, and maybe tie it back and maybe see what would be like a good, what you will, strategy that kind of encompasses the best of all three, because that's what I think really will give people the best itinerary. And
you're going to lean in a direction or more based also, like other things are going to play into affect your location, right? Are there even schools you can access? And different regions have different currencies, and some programs might be more expensive than others. And also what your budget is going to play a huge role into how much are you going to lean heavily on self-taught versus other programs that might be a little bit more on the pricier end. So we'll get into all that, but yeah, definitely you're going to have to be able to assess it yourself to an extent based off your situation.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, schools, there's definitely a lot now.
Yeah.
And way more accessible than our time when we were learning.
What are some schools? So we can just name a few so people know.
So big schools that people might be familiar are, CGMA.
Yep.
Gnomon.
Yep.
Brainstorm.
Yep.
What else?
You got New Edge. Focal Point, Sin Studio, and the real expensive one, Art Center.
Art Center, yeah.
That's the real expensive one.
Yeah. And also it has, Art Center's been around for so long too.
And Fengzhu, actually.
And Fengzhu. Yeah. Can't forget Fengzhu.
So that's an OG. So definitely a lot of options out there. If you're looking for them, they're there. But they are in that list, probably out of those three options, the most expensive option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when we talk about schooling, there's different types of schooling. So you have really good experience with going into it was a diploma program at the time. So yeah, you were basically in. It was like going to college almost.
Kind of, yeah.
For your craft, which isn't always the case, because for me, I was a bit before you.
Yeah.
I took these 8-week classes.
I did the same before.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that is also an option on the table for everyone. It's one of those things where you don't necessarily have to go in for like a 2-year thing that costs I don't know how many thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
The beauty of this day and age is, why not try an online class, put a bit of money in, 10 weeks, you get pro education just like that.
And they're cheaper than mentorships. Usually you're looking at around the $400 range. Usually for a class, it depends on the school, depends on the location. I'm very rough ballpark.
400 seems pretty low though. I think it goes.
I think that's for Sin Studio, but I think it might be more expensive if you're looking at schools in LA. It might be like closer to 600, but
yeah.
Again, really look into it. I don't know the numbers off by heart. I probably should have looked at them actually before we started
but I would say it's pretty general. Like, although, prices go up in general just because of, I guess inflation, stuff like that. I would probably guess it's between the $500,000 range for like a full, let's say 8-week to 10-week
It's
class.
usually under 1,000, but like in general, you're paying less than a mentorship because there's usually like 10 to 20 students in the class. So that's where the con comes in, is that compared to a mentorship where it's just for you, usually a class, you pay less than a mentorship, but you don't get as much dedicated time to your work, to your feedback, because there's multiple students in that same class. So you're getting a lot of the information, a lot of the theory, a lot of the learning, but your pain overs and the correction on your work is going to be a lot shorter in time span. So that, definitely, I would say, is a drawback. So
yeah, that definitely is a drawback. At the same time, what I remember when taking classes that was a great benefit to me was being able to see all the other students' work, and you almost get to see the teacher apply his or her thinking to like 10 students. So in a way, it's like, I wouldn't say it's sometimes better or worse. It may just be on the situation, but I learned a ton seeing the teacher go through other work, because then I would be like, okay, well, I know then I should do that, or I shouldn't make this mistake, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So also another benefit.
Yeah, I agree. That definitely could be a benefit.
And
if
also
the student uses it, right? Because some students don't look at other people's feedback. They just kind of skip through it.
It's a pro tip for sure.
Yeah, pro tip.
It's
look
not
at
just
other
about
people's
your work. It's not just about your feedback. It's like, look at the other feedback. Like, be like, okay, well, what did they do wrong? And if you don't know, then find out what the teacher corrected them, so you can like mentally note that.
Of course.
Yeah.
So you can learn from everybody's work. Like, get the most out. Like, really squeeze as much knowledge as you can out of those classes. And there's like, and what's great about that is that, again, you can pick so much, right? Like places like Sin Studio, Brainstorm, all these schools, CGMA, they offer anything from like pure fundamentals, like your anatomy, your perspective, how to render, all this kind of stuff, ranging from like environment level 1, environment 2, environment 3, like to those more advanced stuff if you want to learn 3D software. So there's a wide net that you can just pick up a class at any moment in your learning process and just be like, okay, I've been doing this for a while. I really want to up my skills in 3D to use that in my concept art workflow. There's going to be a class for that. You can pick one up. There's going to be a school that offers it. So it's very flexible to just be able to pick up classes like that. But you still lack the guidance. You still lack the structure in a lot of ways that you don't have in self-taught, because you're still responsible for picking those classes. Like, where do we find the structure? How do we get that if, let's say, that's something we think we need?
Yeah. And when you say structure, you mean
more guidance that helps you kind of like plan out your time ahead.
Yeah. I guess maybe what we could do is like walk through maybe some scenarios and walk through, let's say, the thinking process that we would do if we were, let's say, someone who either is, straight out of high school, loves art, someone who's like been doing this maybe for a year or two and is like wondering like, wow, I really need to take this to the next level. YouTube videos is maybe not enough, or maybe I tried one course, like what you would do. So maybe we can walk through a scenario like that.
Sure.
Because it's there is a bit of, I would say, you have to kind of assess your situation to know what the best next step is.
I definitely recommend, I think if you're really early on and your fundamental skills are still not there yet, I think a program like an intensive program like I did might not be the solution, because they do have like a certain level of barrier to entry. I think some schools don't. I think CGMA has beginner levels where there's no criteria, anybody can get in, but it's more going to be fundamental focused. And then they have one that there are, I think, criterias. Again, I could be wrong, but from my memory way back. But I know with Sin Studio, the diploma program does have criteria, so you need to be at a certain level to get in. And a lot of programs will have that because they want the people graduating to get jobs. It looks good.
Those are for the more serious programs, though.
Yeah, those are for the more serious programs. So I think those are really great. But if, let's say, you're really early on, your skills are not there to get accepted into one of those programs yet,
like you're just dabbling. I'm imagining like the person who literally, like, not the person who really knows they want to get into this, let's say, 2-year program. Someone who's like, I just need to know like what the general plan is to make this work. So
sometimes calling out schools will have calling out places like Sin, CGMA, they'll have people on the phone that can recommend you classes that you can just pick up as you go. So the class we talked about, you just pick up one. They do usually have people that work there, and you can be like, hey, I'm really beginner. I'm not really at a point where I feel comfortable spending a lot for a huge intensive program yet. I'm not really sure where to start. A lot of times they might give you advice. Like they'll be like, yeah, of course, because they want you to pick up their classes. They'll be like, okay, what do you kind of like to do? You're like, well, I really want to go towards environments and do that kind of stuff. They'll be like, okay, cool. So definitely we encourage you to take perspective. Perspective would be a fantastic class to take. They might not tell you to take anatomy if you want to go into environments. So they might lead you toward perspective. They might lead you towards how to render, maybe intro to digital painting, that kind of stuff. So calling those schools, getting that information if you're interested in taking individual classes early on to start really getting a little bit more of that education, I think is a great way. It doesn't cost money to ask. Worst case scenario, they tell you no. And another way to get that information is sometimes just messaging artists. Not every artist is gonna answer, but you can message professionals like, I've messaged professionals. We've been messaged before. Yeah. It's like sometimes just reaching out and just being like, hey, I want to get into concept art. I'm not really sure what to do. I'm really beginner. Any recommendations for classes or tutorials I should look at? And you'd be surprised. There's a lot of really nice people out there that will gladly give you some pointers. It takes like 10 minutes out of their life to do. And they'll point you in a direction that will definitely help you. So there are ways to go about that. But yeah, definitely I think if you're fresh, fundamentals, like don't worry about the flashy stuff yet. Find courses that are fundamental focused, get your foundation strong, because you'll learn a lot more in those flashy classes if your foundation is good.
Yeah, I would say it's one of those things where like you said, finding the information is crucial. Like you're kind of in this sort of mode where you're trying to answer these big questions. So your trip will be easier because there's nothing, I would say, I don't want to paint a doomsday scenario, but if you're practicing the wrong thing for 3 years, it doesn't matter how hard you're trying. So what you want to do is really just get the plan of how you're going to cross this body of water, whatever analogy you want to use. So you will be spending your time and money, especially your money, in the right spot.
Yeah. So when do intensive programs and mentorships come into the equation? Because those are two we haven't talked too much in detail yet about.
Yeah, so I can speak a bit to that. I've had experience on both sides, being mentored and also mentoring. Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where you want to take things. I would say, like you want to take either you want more guidance. Yeah, you want way more of that teacher-student relationship. Maybe you want someone to keep you more accountable. Yeah. Mentorships are one of those things where you join one and it's like, okay, you're going to do it. It's going to happen. Yeah. So if you're someone that has, like, say, a little less focus than you'd like to, mentorships is a great accountability strategy. Yeah. But at the same time, I remember taking a mentorship myself, and I mentioned it on the last podcast. I took it with Eitan Zana. Yeah. I was targeting information that I couldn't find anywhere else. I was like, you know what? I really want to learn whatever skill gets this result. Yeah. I can't find it anywhere else. Yeah. So mentorship. You went
to the source.
Yeah, I went to the juice land.
The juice source.
And then the juice flowed abundantly. Mm-hmm. But yeah, in my case, I wanted to spend time. Mm-hmm. It's almost like I really feel like it's the same situation where like apprentice goes to the master's workshop and like dedicates a summer to like really learn all that the apprentice can learn. I wanted to do the same thing, and mentorships are a great way because a lot of really good artists that you like, I would say, usually have done a mentorship. Yeah. Maybe not all of them, but you'd be surprised. A lot of them have offered mentorships, and that's
they don't all advertise it. Sometimes you just have to message them and ask them.
Yeah, which you have experience doing as well. We've actually recommended to some friends of ours, like, hey, you should just ask the person to mentor them, and then it actually happens.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. I've messaged people that I've never mentored before, and I don't want to like just drop names in case they don't want to, but they never mentored, and I was just like, well, I'd really like to do it, and they were like, well, I'm not really comfortable with doing a whole structure thing. I'm like, it doesn't need structure. I just want you to look over my stuff and like tear it apart and give me feedback. And they're like, I can do that. I was like, great, perfect. We're on the same page.
And it's amazing.
It's like, sometimes it's that simple, and they're down to do it. And some of them, they offer it. They don't advertise it unless you reach out to them because they don't have the bandwidth to have 50 people that they're mentoring. Like usually they'll anywhere between 1 to 10 is usually going to be the maximum if they work full time. So it's not something they're going to be advertising a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing about mentorships that, and this might, we can actually talk about self-taught and how to superpower your self-taught journey, because I think self-teaching is the
foundation.
It's the foundation to all your learning, because it's in essence, everything you learn is through yourself. Yeah. So one of the things for mentorships that gives it an amazing, I would say, advantage is, if you're someone who really wants to get the most out of something, the mentorship is the best place for that.
It's super focused. It's like very concentrated on a specific thing.
Yeah, like you get to ask questions like directly to the teacher. If it's a one-on-one, hopefully it is a one-on-one mentorship. You can be like, well, wait, for this, like, why are you doing this? And then you can go in like a 20-minute, you know, deep dive on a subject. And that's maybe something you couldn't do, you know, in a class. Maybe there wouldn't be enough time, etc.
Unless you have me as a teacher that goes over by 1 hour.
Unless you have Nick, the benevolent.
No, it's not just me.
Maybe you don't want to advertise that here. Oh, Nick, we'll give you a 20-minute.
I've had many teachers who've done this. I have a bad habit of doing it, but I've had many teachers who've done this, and I have some coworkers who teach who do this as well. And they go on tangent, and sometimes they're teaching a 3-hour class, but the class is not 3 hours. It ends up being like 4 hours, 4.5 hours, because they keep going. You've had those teachers.
I was one of them too. I would be like, I'll just stay, guys. This is like, and it's, you know, it's kind of beautiful because, dude, we love teaching. Like, it's kind of what happens when you like to teach. So, yeah.
You go on, you're like, I swear it's going to end at 9 this time. And then you look and it's like 10 o'clock.
Yeah, you got like students looking at you with like, you know, little glistening eyes. They're like, hey, can I have another? And then you're like, oh, I can't say no. It's like, yeah, man, it's great to put in the extra time because I feel like the students really benefit from it. So. But at the same time, we definitely
it's late sometimes.
Sleep.
Some students, mine are like 2 a.m, and it's like it's late for them and they want to go to sleep. So I kind of also feel
you have
teach online.
You're an international teacher. Yeah.
So I feel kind of bad if I go because it's like 2 a.m. for some of them. It's like, oof, that's kind of rough. Yeah. But yeah, so it's like you can ask those specific questions. In most cases, you usually don't. You don't always get that, especially if the classes are like really structured and like the class cuts off or something. Different schools have different ways of doing it. Yep. But yeah, like you get something out of there where you can ask specific questions targeted that you really need answered. And the focus is about you. It's about nobody else in this mentorship. You get really concentrated learning. Where I think mentorships maybe don't work that well is I find they don't work early on in the learning process unless somebody really specializes in teaching you the fundamentals and that's what they kind of cater their mentorship towards. You'll find that a lot of artists are not that interested in mentoring the fundamentals. It's not as common to find
one of them.
Yeah, it's very dry, and I'll be honest, it's harder to teach than it looks sometimes. It's like you really got to know it like really, really well to be teaching the fundamentals. I sometimes cannot explain it that well. I think me will be like, oh, there's 1 point perspective, 2 point perspective, 3 point perspective. Okay, you know perspective. Okay, we're done.
Yeah, and there's also something to, you know, there's maybe a preconception out there that if, you know, you're mentored by someone and they take you from like literally the bottom to the top, that's going to be like the best way to learn. I don't agree at all. No. I think you need to kind of, it's like, you know, let's say you want to be a chef, like don't only eat Thai food and be like, you know, I'll just eat only Thai food.
I don't know about that. Thai food's pretty good.
Be good at Thai food only. I mean, you probably could do that, but no, like expose yourself to as many different cuisines.
Wait, don't sushi chefs just do that and like,
I'm sure they do. I'm sure it's the worst analogy ever. But I'm just more like, let's say you're like, you want to get good at this cooking thing. You're probably going to try all the cuisines to really find out like how cooking works through different lenses. So what I mean would be, like if you're learning the fundamentals or the intro, like the basics to concept art or illustration, please try different teachers. Yeah. Because who knows, maybe you'll have a teacher and you'll be like, oh, this is pretty good. I learned a lot. Yeah. But maybe that other teacher, you'd be like, oh my God. For some reason, it clicked more with them than the first one. But you would have never known if you were like, okay, well, I'll just be mentored by this one person forever. So please definitely consider that in the equation.
Just for anatomy alone, like you can take anatomy classes. You can go onto Proco and watch his videos on anatomy. You can look up the resources that TB Choi has on our ArtStation. You could look up old school book like Andrew Loomis, Michael Hampton. Like there's tons of them. So it's like there's so many different places to source your information. You're going to get so many different answers. I've read all of Samantha Youssef's book on gesture. It is not the same way of doing gesture for Michael Hampton. Like they do it differently. Like everybody has their own different way of solving these problems, and some will resonate with different people better than others
at different times too.
At different times too.
I've been through those books and when I like read Samantha's book,
Yeah.
it clicked instantly. I was, this is exactly what I needed
Yeah.
at that time.
Yeah.
But then, funny enough, as I started to improve more, other sources of anatomy knowledge clicked more.
Yeah.
So it wasn't only one teacher's work methods that were like building me all the way from 0 to 100. You need to kind of be adaptable.
Yeah.
And find out what the next step is. Try different things.
Yeah.
Etc.
Yeah, I agree. So definitely mentorships is something I think we can kind of, in most cases, is better later down the line when you know more specifically what you want to do. And they're great even after you start working. They can get some, you can keep learning from amazing people, even if you're working as a junior, you have a lot of experience and you just want to, like, let's say you do a lot of environments. You're like, I really want to expand in doing vehicles. So you get a mentorship with somebody who's like amazing at vehicles, and like, you can just keep going with that. I think there's no limit to mentorships, and self-taught or any forms of education. But yeah, mentorships I think are better a little bit later than at the start.
100%. Like what you just said, let's say you do like intro to vehicles.
Yeah.
You do intro to concept art, which teaches you about shapes and
Yeah.
stuff like that and design. And then maybe you do, maybe a year of other stuff. Maybe after that year and a half, you're like, well, I kind of know how to do vehicles.
Yeah.
I'm sort of good at design. Let's take it to the next level. And that's when the mentorship would be like, okay, well, let's get you that, extra, more intermediate advanced knowledge that would be more beneficial in a mentorship than it would be just going to an intro class. You just
go to the person who's
class.
really nuts at vehicles. Like, that's just insane. Like, get what they're doing that makes it insane. Like, figure it out, because a lot of people can teach, like, design is a very wide topic, but at the same time, like, whether you're teaching design or I'm teaching design, we're going to be repeating the same thing: big, medium, small, shape, harmony, contrast. Like, we're going to repeat the same thing over. You don't need a specialist to tell you this information. A lot of concept artists, we all have to design, whether it's environments, characters, whatever it is. We know the basics of design. But if you want to learn something really specific, really in detail, that's when mentorships really kick in and are fantastic.
Definitely.
Yeah. So what about long-term programs?
Long-term programs?
Yeah, like intensive diploma programs. What are the pros and cons of those?
The pros and cons of those? I mean, it's definitely one of those things where it gives you more of that, you're taking a degree sort of feeling. You're really locking into that school lifestyle sort of thing. In
Not
your
all
case,
have degree, right? Huh? They don't all have degrees, though. That
no, that's true. You don't get a degree, but it is the same kind of thing where it's like you're signing up, for that 2-year. What would the best word be?
It's like program, program, of sorts,
And so you get that, it almost is like a college experience where you meet the group you're going to be with for the next 2 year, and you there's going to be like friends, and also healthy competition with your classmates. You're going to go through this journey together. It won't be the same as you just in your office taking courses online and you never see your classmates at all. In this case, you're really part of like quote unquote campus kind of feeling. So that is great. I would say if you want that experience, if that's going to benefit you. For me, I loved I didn't go to like an intensive, but I liked being in a classroom where there's like 19 other people there. I got to make friends. I got to be immersed into like what this journey is all about. And it wasn't just me in my, bedroom with my tablet. So I would say that's a huge benefit. Another benefit is, it's like there is an accountability. You're investing a lot of money usually in this. And so you're going to make it work usually. Maybe not always. Like, there are definitely people who take it more less seriously than others, but it definitely is a heavy, like, it in poker, you're going all in kind of. You're putting all your chips on the table. So it really is a dedication towards the goal that you have in mind. Yeah. So those are some positives. There's definitely a lot of positives regarding the education itself, for sure.
Yeah, you get
I guess you can speak to that.
Yeah, well, you get a lot of wide range of different teachers that will influence you. Like, obviously, you're gonna jive with some more than others. Like, some of them, it's gonna click and it's gonna work for you. But you get a lot of different perspective, advice from a lot of different people, so you're able to really like make good decisions. You have all this information from different people's experiences. That's really awesome. as well as the connections are huge. Like that's probably one of the biggest selling points. You go to a program, like the school usually sends out your stuff. They show your work. Like I know the Feng Zhu school shows off the stuff, and studio shows off the stuff. Like these schools, they want you to get a job. It's good if you get a job.
Yeah.
It's good for the school. Like
they have an active interest, actually.
If they're like, our students got hired at Ubisoft and Eidos and like Virtuos and all these places, it looks good, right? Like it looks good for them as a selling point. So they will send out your stuff. They will show your work to people. They will invite recruiters to see your stuff at the end of the graduation. That is a huge selling point of the program. You're making connection. You have all these students that you're learning and growing with. Like these people in 5 years, they might be like, hey man, I heard you're looking for a job. We have a spot here at my studios. I can recommend you if you want. And again, you wouldn't have had that if you didn't meet that person. So that's like a huge benefit to going into these programs.
100%.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the bigger ones.
Yeah. And it's great, these connections you make. All these teachers, they're really, I mean, you're probably really good at this. Like you
good at anything.
Nick, don't make me hug you.
Thank you. That's very nice of you.
I gotta come for you on this podcast. Okay.
Should have just agreed. Sorry, what's up? I cut you off.
Oh my god. Monkey wrench my brain.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, if anyone, I was really bad at this, but you made some really good, friendly connections with the teachers. Like you became friends with a lot of them, right?
Yeah, I stayed in contact with some of them. I mean, they were super chill. I still, one of my teachers, Fred Rambaud, I still stay in contact with. Hi, Fred, if you're watching.
Hello.
He's really
Bonjour.
awesome. His stuff is kick-ass. If you haven't seen his stuff, it's insane. But yeah, like, you know, he had a huge influence on a lot of us. He'd show up and he'd like chill with us before the class. Because if I'm not mistaken, at the time he was teaching, he was in like Quebec City, really far away, and the school's in Montreal. So he'd like come down for the weekend. So sometimes he'd get there early and we'd talk with him, some of the students that were there early. That was really awesome. And yeah, we stayed in contact. But I stayed in contact with a few teachers. Like honestly, like at the end of the day, they're artists like you and I and everybody else that's doing concept art. We all love to do what we do. We're always trying to learn from each other. Like it's just like we all have the same passion towards the craft. And so yeah, like, you know, you're gonna meet people, whether it's teachers, students, the school as connection recruiters. You're gonna make a lot of connections. But I think this is really important to preface this because I see a lot of people do this, and I think that's a big no-no. Don't go in to meeting somebody for the sake of a connection, like a
yeah, these are like social or networking 101, I guess.
Yeah, like
kind of things.
Friend first, be a nice person first, friend first, connection after. If you're just going in there to make connection because you want jobs, you want this, you want that.
But Nick, I'm a very socially awkward person, and I really admire the person. I'm playing devil's advocate because this is what I dealt with.
I know, but I just meant more like if you're just going in there for the shallowness of just making a connection, you're going in there for the wrong reasons. And it's just, I don't think that's really a good way to go about it. People are going to sniff that a mile away.
But at the end of the day, I mean, if I could speak to this, I think I have some experience with this. I used to be very nervous around artists that because they're like, oh my God, this person's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, me, I'm not amazing. Yeah. And so it created that kind of unease around these people.
I still feel that unease next to you, Sean.
It's okay. It's wow.
I'm sorry. Keep
not going. The right day for this for me. Nick, stop it. But returning to my awkwardness conversation, I had a lot of issues around being, let's say, trying to just be myself around, you know, some teachers, but especially artists that I admired. You know, you all kind of, at least this is kind of an expression that I can relate to a lot. You kind of idolize these people, and I feel like at the end of the day, they're not really as, like, they're not as cool as you think they are. And I don't mean that, I'm not trying to downplay them. It's just, they are, if not way more similar than to you than you think they are.
Yeah. They like the same nerdy things as you. They play video games. They watch anime. They make bad pieces of art sometimes. They
All the
do
time.
it all the time.
Except
they just
me,
don't, except you. Sean, you're perfect. I just want to preface this. Everybody watching the podcast, Sean never makes mistakes. He is perfect. Okay. So now that we got that out of the way.
I'm 1 for 1. No, wait. I'm 1,000 for 0 perfect every time. Every stroke.
He's never made a mistake in his life. I've seen him work. Every brushstroke he puts down is like never gets undone. He never clicks undo.
I have the God hand, as they say.
Imagine that. You just work never clicking undo. That's what I mean. Actually,
I don't need it. I just remove the button.
That's what traditional people do.
I took the pliers, yanked it out.
That's true.
And I put a picture of Bruce Lee in its place.
So you're a digital traditional artist. You don't have an undo button.
Exactly.
That's
I roll
funny.
like that.
I was like, imagine not having an undo button. I was like, wait a minute, that's just traditional.
Yeah.
Shows I don't do a lot of traditional.
No.
I just outed myself.
Yeah, you're like the in a 3D program lifestyle kind of boy.
Not even. I'm not even that 3D heavy of a person.
I keep thinking that your day is just like opening a CAD software and then that's all you do all day.
No, I like line work. I like to be
I'm
in
gonna make a chamfer today.
Ooh, Boolean operations.
Boolean operations.
Okay, we're getting really nerdy.
Yeah, where we were at
I don't remember
making human connections or making a human basically a human connection with your teachers.
Yeah, and your
all the art
classmates.
And your classmates.
Yeah.
For sure. And just realizing that, man, we're all like just human. We all want the same thing. Yeah. We just want to have a good time together.
Yeah.
So maybe that will help people that might feel a bit intimidated with their teachers. I get it. I'm still intimidated with people that I admire. But at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. So that would be a little tidbit of knowledge. Anything else you want to add to that? Because I want to circle back to superpowering your self-taught journey, because that's where a lot of the gold nuggets are, I find, in this journey.
I think, the last thing I'll close to it is like a good time to do those programs. Again, when you have a certain level you don't need to be perfect at fundamentals. Like you're still going to work on those in the programs, but you know a bit of your way around the block. You've started designing some characters, giving some attempts at environment concept art. So at least you have something to apply with to these programs. It's not something you do at the start. It's something you do maybe after a year and a half into that journey you've started.
Yep.
So
work towards it.
But super quick, just to clarify, you don't need to go to a school. You know somebody who didn't go to a school and was fully self-taught. So it is possible. I just want to make that very clear. We
should have him on the podcast if he would ever agree.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, I just want to make this very clear. If, I'm not saying everybody has the same situation. Not everybody has the same financial income. I get it. Some people might be in a situation where they don't have the income to even pick up the classes, and maybe buying a tutorial is expensive. I want to be sympathetic to that. I understand that. That does happen to people. Those are situations that people exist in. You know somebody who did it fully self-taught. Like, it is possible. Yes. Do you want to talk about that a bit, so at least they know that it is possible without all those more expensive options?
His story is that of legends.
Do you want to, like, a quick version?
Yes. My brother, Tyler Vo, he basically got really good at this craft in like 2.5 years or something, 3 years.
Yeah, it's pretty fast.
And he like took a few classes online. I think he might have went to the Sin Studio classes in person a few times, but he didn't do any intensives. He was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna figure out what I need to do, and he just did it in his bedroom. He lived that life, and he did it. Like he really improved, and he's a testimony to the self-taught victory. I don't know what to call it.
Did you help him a lot, or no? He really went. I gave
him rough direction. I was like,
directions.
This is what I was like, hey man, and he's like, hey. Hey Tyler, I hope you're listening. He's for sure listening.
That sounds like Tyler too.
He's like, why are you doing this, man? I'm your brother, man. I got to do this. I was like, hey man. He was like, hey. I was like, yeah, just like, what I would do is X, Y, and Z. But besides that, I didn't give him, let's say, the same attention, let's say I would do on a mentorship where I'm like always overpainting, running through like an hour of material. I didn't do that. I just told him, hey, look, this is the framework for getting good. Yeah. And it seemed to work for him. I'm sure he did other stuff too. I don't want to say that my direction is the only reason why he got good. But Tyler is very specific. I'd love if he can actually come on the podcast one day. But
talk about that journey.
His what I like to say is like, if you are doing the self-taught journey, it would be great to find out like what are the ways where you can, let's say you're a railway, that you can lubricate the rails as much as you can. So
interesting choice of words here, but
Juicy Brush podcast. Juice the rails.
There you go.
Yeah, you want to juice the rails as much as you can. So when you do put that effort, with the tutorials and all that kind of stuff, it just flies.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that you're not dealing with like really annoying obstacles. You want to set yourself up for success. And I think if there's something I would ask Tyler, it would be like, okay, what did you put in place? Because a lot of people, would want to save the money. They would want to, and also learn how to do it themselves. Like there's something very empowering about, you know what, I'm going to take this in my own hands. I can do this on my own. I'm just going to get good and do it. So maybe we can speak a bit about that. Like let's jump into, the self-taught journey, maybe stuff you've learned about it. I was very self-taught. I did go to classes, but at the same time, I would say 80% of my learning, maybe 70, 80%. It depends how I see it. A lot of it was done through finding like very specific tutorials and just like getting at it.
Yeah. I think I listened to Shadi and I did what he said.
I also listened to Shadi and did what he said. So maybe we should talk about that.
I have to remember what he said. I'd have to go back and watch this video.
The mountain metaphor.
What was the mountain metaphor? Remind me,
please. So first of all, we won't take any credit for this way of this perspective.
No credit.
But this changed the game for me and how I was like, basically, it's a practical guide at getting good. It's not like a fluff of like, work harder, spend more time, don't play games. That's all good. But this piece of knowledge,
it's good to not play games.
Probably not.
Oh, okay.
When you're getting good, you want to make sure that you have a lot of time for this. It was the climbing the mountain metaphor that Shadi had. He had a Gumroad on it. Pick it up, guys, and support Shadi, by the way, if you can. You can get the original video. But essentially, the way to get good at this kind of thing, concept art, is that you have to realize that rather than just trying to get good and doing a tutorial, going here, getting a little better, little better. That's a tongue twister.
Yep, there you go.
The mountain metaphor is you want to look at the guy on top, like who's on the top.
Yeah.
And at the time he was making a reference. It's like Jamie Jones or Maciej Kuchera. These guys are just like they're at the top. They're so damn good. Most people, they're like, oh, they're so good. And then they'll just like do the tutorials or whatever, like other tutorials, and they'll go up the mountain slowly. And they'll be like, oh, well, like, why am I not good yet? Blah, blah, blah. I'm butchering his explanation probably.
Oh, for sure.
What he said is, no, you look at the guy on top and do what they did.
So it's kind of like rock climbing. You follow the trail of like the things that they've placed already.
Exactly. You just literally do.
We don't rock climb, by the way, so we're also butchering that.
Yeah. I think why it's a little unintuitive. It seems obvious, but why it's unintuitive sometimes is that it feels like you're a copycat.
Yeah.
And people don't like that. They're like, oh, well, do I really want to like, do their tutorial one-to-one? And when I say one-to-one, not like copying, but like literally spend the whole time like replicating everything they did. Maybe making a different scene, but like replicating every step. It's like, that feels like I don't have my own voice. And it feels wrong to a lot of people. But here's what they don't understand. Like everything in existence in terms of like how humanity evolved is building on the actions of others. Like the reason why we can do all this amazing art is because there's like thousands of years of art evolution where every like generation would improve on the generation before. And what they didn't do was like, oh, I'm just going to keep trying and getting better. No, they were like, how the hell did the guy who's way better than me, like 500 times better than me, do that? And they literally copied them because we mimic each other. Like, let's say you're a hunter-gatherer, like you wouldn't be like, I'm just going to keep trying to, shoot the arrow better. You could do that, but maybe it'll take you like really long to get really good at it. Or you can be like, who's the best hunter in my tribe? I'm going to go with that guy.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to like literally mimic him.
Yeah, for sure.
So in art, it's not bad when you're starting out. I would say it's better to mimic.
Yeah.
And we can go into the nuances of what mimicking is, like good mimicking versus bad mimicking, is to mimic the best artists. It's unbelievably that simple. That's what I told my brother. I was just go.
In
go
like
on.
video game terms, it's kind of like using an experience boost, because you could kind of do it your own way, make a lot of mistake, grind out the mobs, level up every single level, or you could get an experience boost. And in our case, the experience boost is looking at somebody who already went through all the mistakes. They already just failed a ton and they're already like really, really good. And if you're really understanding what they're doing, you can potentially skip some of those failing points, and it already counts as a success for you, because you're picking up the skill and you have an understanding why it works already. You didn't have to go through all those pain points, but like they went through necessarily. And so that kind of speeds up your progress. You're jumping a lot faster through the levels. You're not going level 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going level 1 to 5 to 10 to 15. Like you're jumping a lot faster, and because you're learning from other people. Like, why make your life harder? Like, they went through the hard stuff, learn from them, and then you're going to have your own walls to have to learn and go through that other people are going to learn from you of how you went through those.
Exactly. And learning from them, it's this, I think it's a very, like, here's two ways you could do it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, they'll be like, okay, this is a really great artist. I'm gonna learn from them. They'll grab their tutorial, they'll watch it, and then they'll like do what they always do, and then like maybe some of it will seep in.
Yeah.
That's way number one. That's, I think, what usually happens. Like, I do a tutorial, but I kind of just do it my way. Oh, maybe there's a little thing extra you can add. Great. What I recommend is put your ego away.
Yeah, I recommend that too.
Do the tutorial like you're trying to be them.
Yep.
Do that
always. I think
because then you actually you actually get to be like, oh my god, like I would have never done it this way unless I put my ego away. And I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do exactly what the tutorial says. Like, I'm not gonna like try to level up my own way. I'm going to inhabit the point of view of that other artist. Like, one example I did, or one example that I can give, is that let's say you have an artist you really like. Maybe it's a environment artist, and let's say it's because there's a very popular boom in photoreal art, which was for The Last of Us. And if you guys haven't seen that artwork before, it's insane. It's still insane.
We talked about it last time, I think, last episode.
I think so. Getting good at, let's say, if you want to, let's say, be that type of artist, and to shout out some names who are really amazing at it. There's Florent Lebrun. There's guys like Romain Joandeau. There's John Sweeney. All these guys where Eitan Sana, where the super beautiful cinematic composition of, let's say, real world photo bash elements just comes together. It's beautiful, elegant.
Yeah. Also, Conte Mebedier, I think, is that other.
Yeah, Quentin or Conte.
Yeah.
Amazing. So good. The best way to really, if that's your direction, the best way to do it is not to just like, okay, I'm going to practice photo bashing. Yeah. Maybe you watch a tutorial, then you practice your photo bashing. No, it's like, sit down. If they did, let's say, an exterior shot, and they were photo bashing an exterior shot with, let's say, a broken building, character in foreground, blah, 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 and it's that, do exactly that environment. Maybe it's not exactly what they did, let's say, 1-to-1.
Yeah, it's not the exact same composition. Maybe like it might be close. Your building's a little different, but like really try and like do what they're doing to like
do their recipe. Yeah. Like follow their recipe, make it a bit your own. Yeah. But make it so like everything in the tutorial you can like pretty much use all the tools they did. Yeah. And I guarantee you, like if you do that, it will be uncomfortable. You'll be like, God, this is a lot.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And that's normal. But you'll come out and you'll have skipped, I don't know, like months and maybe years sometimes of what it would be like if you did it on your own and kind of like try to like just improve photo bashing a bit or improve that workflow just a bit by bit. You went straight to the source. You went straight up the mountain rather than through like all these mini plateaus and then wondering why you're not improving, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. And the thing is with that, and like still to this day, we still look at other artists, we look up to their work and we try to learn from them when we do pieces. Like that hasn't stopped. This is something we apply all the time when we're doing pieces. Like this is not a habit we've thrown away as we improve. It's a habit we double down on and keep using because we know it works so well. You learn so fast and we get so much knowledge out of looking at other people's work and try to extrapolate that information because everybody's just like so good at something and you can learn from so many different people. It doesn't mean you pick an artist and your next 7 pieces you'll learn from that same artist. No, like vary it up. There's so many people to learn from. Like one piece you do this person. I love doing line work. I don't do the same person for line work every time I do a line work piece. I look at all these amazing, there's like Rio Skywalker. I don't think that's his real name, but that's what he calls himself on ArtStation. Amazing with line work. There's so many people. I like Shang Lam's line work. Like there's so many people that do really cool line work. TB Choi, amazing line work. Like so many people to learn from. Learn from all of them. Get all that knowledge that you can.
Yeah, like get a tutorial, find out how they do it, look at their sketches and just do it like do exactly the way they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally that simple. Yeah, definitely. Like there's so many parallels to this in other fields. Like I'm getting good into good into music. I'm getting into music, but there's a similar way to get better at music. It's like go to the people who are good and learn their songs.
Exactly.
Rather than being like, oh, I'm gonna figure it out one note at a time. No, go to the best and start and then figure out how to do it from there. I'm not saying to grab like the most complicated jazz piece, but you definitely want to, as your fundamentals are building up, start really getting into the shoes of the best so that you don't have to like spend so much time. Anyways, brain.
But it is you're right. It is putting your ego aside. Cause one thing like I do want to stress, like that's really important is that if you can put that ego aside and just focus on learning, one, you're going into this to learn. You're doing this piece to learn. So why not make it about learning? Don't be like, oh, I want to make my own piece for my art. No, make it about learning. Absorb those techniques because you might have a piece by the end of it. And if you don't, it really doesn't matter because you're going to learn so much from there that you can apply to your next piece, which will be much better than it was before. And on top of it, just to give some perspective, your level a year after that point is going to be so much better that you're not going to like the stuff that you did a year ago. So this stuff right now at the moment that you're feeling so precious about, you're like, no, but like, this is going to be like really amazing. I need to put it on my art stage. No. Don't be pressured about it. Put the ego away because you'll be in the same boat as us. You'll be looking at that stuff from a year ago and you'll be like, man, I'm so much better now. I've improved. That's not really right. I've improved so much now. And you're looking and you're seeing all these old mistakes you used to do and you'll be happy that you put that ego aside and focused on the learning aspect.
Yeah, it's really about getting the skills.
Yeah.
Like target skills, not, what would be a good quote? Target skills, not...
bills. I don't know.
Target skills, not pills. How about that? Don't do drugs.
That's the moral.
But in a sense, it's like you want to view it as I really want to get the skills, not this dopamine payoff of I made a good piece, yay! And, you know, like that is okay. It has its place. We all want to build a portfolio where like we all want to find our place in the industry, in the social sphere or on ArtStation where you're like, I'm really proud of my portfolio and people seem to like it. That there is a healthy place for that. But especially when you're learning, that shouldn't overshadow, I need skills, because skills will give you the opportunity for so much more, like your job, making the cool pieces that will get, the attention that you want, etc. It really comes down to your skill set.
Yeah, 100% agree. So now that we talked, we're going to do an episode that's really deep dive into the journey of like education. We'll probably have a guest for that where we bring somebody who's done it and is a junior and get the perspective from start to finish and how it was different going in. But like, I think we'll jump on to our next topic from here. So now let's say you've kind of figured out a bit where you want your education to be sourced, whether it's mentorships, tutorials, schools, you kind of figured that out. And then you have the next big question. And it's a really big one that people sometimes don't know till a half a year before they get their first job sometimes, but it's better if you know it sooner, is what do you want to focus on? Do you want to be an environment person?
You want to be an astronaut or Dentist? What do you want to be when you grow up, Nick?
I want to be a dinosaur.
I want to be a dentist.
Rawr.
Yeah, this reminds me of a South Park episode where the guy, he becomes a dolphin or something, like later in life. I think it's a dolphin. It's been a long time.
But yeah, what do you want to pick? Do you want to be a character person? Do you want to be a hard surface person? Do you want to be environments, creatures? Because we'll get into it, but these all have their pros and cons to be aware of. And I think there's a pro that outweighs any con we're going to say, which is if you love it, do it. But in general, there are pros and cons to all of these things. If you're indifferent on a lot of them and you love them all equally, maybe that you want to know. So how do you want to just jump into one of them, or?
Well, yeah, we can just start with like laying the buffet of options,
yeah,
on the table. Mm-hmm. So you can get a little overview.
Yeah.
Essentially, if you're this artist who you want to do art, and I'm assuming it's concept art, could be maybe a bit of illustration. Let's just focus on concept art for this one.
Yeah.
There is usually like a, trifecta or a trio, or two or three, but let's say three for this time.
There's a trifecta, and then there's a fourth brother that's kind of like on his own, living the life on backpacking through
Nomad.
Europe, which is creature.
I wasn't even thinking of that.
Because that one is like very niche out of all of them.
We'll call it niche because niche can be so many different things. If you're
That's true.
Yeah. So essentially, you have the character artist, character concept artist, who does all the characters, main characters, NPCs, humanoids, all that kind of stuff.
And you sometimes do creatures if there's not characters kind of ties into creatures, because just to know, there is not a lot of creature position. We'll talk more in detail about creatures afterwards. And because of this, sometimes studios don't hire a person that just does creatures. Sometimes the people who do characters will also be doing the creatures. Not all the time, but that is something that does happen. They kind of go one and the same because of how niche creature design can sometimes be.
Yeah, niche. Yeah, to speak a little more about it, like, usually if there's going to be someone who can do creatures, it will be their character guys, because the skills translate very well, since you're basically learning just slightly different anatomy. The skills are analogous.
But it's not to say you can't specialize in creature. I don't want to say don't do it. I don't want to sugarcoat it. It is very, very niche, but there are people that do creatures that exist out there. I don't know a lot of names by heart. I don't follow a lot of creature. The first one that comes to my head is Tara Whitlash.
Yeah, I mean, she's like the OG.
Yeah, but I know there's others. I just don't follow a lot of creature people.
Them either.
But maybe we should look into that to drop some names in the description for other people. They do exist. Again, they're backpacking through Europe, but they exist.
You can spot one before the solar.
The solar eclipse.
Not the solar, yeah.
They were all summoning Cthulhu, a creature.
Yeah, exactly. Every lunar cycle, you can find one.
Yeah. But like there are people that want to do it. Like even when I was in this in-studio program, there was, I think, one person in the program that really wanted to specialize in creatures, and that's really what they did. And sometimes those creature people, they might even go into illustration and do like Magic the Gathering art, and they do like creature stuff all the time. Like there is a place for them. Just understand that it's very niche, and usually that means that your skill level needs to be very high because there's not as many positions for them. The niche it is. Sure. Yeah.
But besides that, let's just to give the overview.
Yeah, let's go back.
So you got characters. Yeah. We'll keep the big ones. Characters. Then you have environments.
Yeah.
So it's pretty self-explanatory, environments. And then you have props, I would say.
And then that opens up into...
Props, I would say props is, it's pretty much props, which can encompass usually like vehicles, sometimes weaponry. You have your crates and barrels, all that kind of stuff. But props can be anything. Like there's so many different types. So props can be its own thing. Like you just literally are as a concept artist, like a product designer. You're really making more of a product designer point of view.
Tends to be more hard surface focused, sci-fi usually, if that's the case.
Exactly. Like for those projects, like getting a specialist for that, it tends to be a little more common. That's like for fantasy.
Or for like Destiny, Halo, things like that. You usually have somebody, like I know for Apex, they had Danny Gardner, right? That did a lot of vehicles, a lot of the prop stuff for both Apex and Titanfall.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So there's props. And for the fourth, I would say it's kind of like either generalist, actually. So there is the generalist hat that you could wear. That happens. We can get into the details about that.
Yeah.
It's a big question that is on a lot of people's mind a lot of times,
Which
especially
is changing
students.
every year.
Yeah. So we can answer a bit of questions regarding that. I know I had a lot of questions when I was a student. It's like, what should I do? Should I do one thing or all of them? You know?
Yeah.
Good question. And then I would say the last category is kind of this niche category where maybe in your profession later down the line, let's say you have a very specific love for something. It's like one thing.
Spaceships.
Yeah, you're like the spaceship person.
Yeah, you do all the spaceships, and that's what you like to do. Then if you're really, really good at it, usually probably companies are going to come to you, hey, we have this really big, important spaceship for this movie or this game. Can you design it? Like, you'll be the person that people go to.
Yep.
I think Sid Mead was that, right? Like,
Sid Mead was many things.
Sid Mead was many things. Yeah.
He was many
things.
The ultimate generalist? No, he was more sci-fi.
Yeah,
but
sci-fi.
Definitely he wore a lot of hats.
Yeah.
What a guy.
But yeah, so like you can be, but that like the super, super specific stuff tends to start happening later in the career. It's not impossible, but a lot harder right out the gate as a junior.
And also not necessarily the advice I would give to someone starting out or looking to find their first job. Not to say that it can't be done, but you might narrow the potentials for jobs if you go too niche too early. But then again, just a general advice. So let's get into each one. Let's talk about the realities of...
Let's talk about vegetables first.
Okay. What's your favorite vegetable?
Broccoli, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I love broccoli.
Nice.
But yeah, so...
You're not going to ask me mine? I feel so disrespected. Why wouldn't you ask me?
I dismissed it because I knew you were doing a bit and it was a joke. Okay, what's your favorite?
I'm not telling you.
Okay, fine. What's your favorite vegetable, Sean?
Is a potato a vegetable?
Is it a vegetable? I think so.
It's not a fruit.
It's not a fruit. It's not. I think it's a vegetable.
Potato is the best fruit.
It might be a candy. Okay, no, it's a vegetable.
Nature does not use candy as a word. It's a fruit. No, but I like potatoes. Yeah. I think potatoes are really awesome. Really good.
So can we get back to concept right now?
No, let's talk about vegetables. Let's talk about how to be a vegetable gardener. How to open your first garden. Should we go to school for that, or you should do self-taught?
I've never done gardening. Actually, that's not true. I have done gardening. I did it for 7 years working at the city. What am I saying? I have done gardening, but
damn, I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, I did landscaping in general, mowing lawns, cutting hedges, like gardening.
A man of many
planting
crafts.
And weeding. Like I'm like making myself sound cooler than it actually was. But anyways, to get back to concept art, the vegetables, the props. I think one thing that you mentioned before we started recording, we talked about. And something I say, there's the base level of props, which is whether you want to do characters, whether you want to do environments, you're gonna have to do props. Like whether you like it or not, it's part
whether
of
you
the
like
package.
It or not.
It's part of the package.
Gotta eat your vegetables, honey.
Yeah.
Or no ice cream later.
Yeah. This is a different story when you start getting into advanced props like vehicles, spaceships, guns, mechs, that kind of stuff. That's more niche, that's more specialized, but everybody has to do props. Like juniors tend to have to do the props. If you like doing environments, your environments is filled with props. And if you're doing a character, your character is covered in props. You should have a general understanding and at least at a basic level of prop design. Like
it's impossible to avoid props a lot of times because as an environment artist, like I don't think there's any environment concept artist who's never had to do a prop.
Especially if you like sci-fi. Especially
anything.
Sci-fi.
It's like even if you're doing some sort of fantasy thing, it's like you know, you might have to do a rock, you know, like some cool rock, and that it turns into a prop because it's literally isolated. So your environment is made of props if you think about it like that. So essentially, you're basically an environment concept artist / you know, whenever you want me to do props artists also. Yeah. And like you were saying, like for the characters, you know, characters wear things, right?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes, usually they'll have a prop person to design a weapon, but in some cases, you might have to design some of the gear in more detail and more zoomed in for your character. That does happen sometimes for character people, depending on the studio. Not always, but in some cases, you might have to. So, like, being able to design at least some basic props and stuff like that is an important skill. So I guess maybe get comfortable with that idea, learn to love them because they're a part of whatever you really do want to do, which is
So you're going to have to do
environments.
props, basically. But yeah, to help people choose, though, maybe
Yeah.
we can talk a bit about, okay,
Pros
so
and
you will
cons.
have to do props. So now
To a
what?
basic level, yeah.
So now what? Because props are a great intro to designing.
Yep. Yeah.
If you know how to design a prop well,
Mhm.
the knowledge tends to translate into
Mhm.
the other fields. So how would you narrow the choice for someone so to make them easier to choose?
Number one is if you like it or not, right? Like that's going to be, I think the number one thing, if you love environments and you don't see yourself doing anything else, you don't like doing characters, you don't like doing creatures, there's nothing that we're going to say here to change that. Like do environments. If you love creatures, no matter how niche, do creatures. And same with like characters. Like if your love for a certain one of these is that much, like again, nothing, this doesn't apply.
Sometimes
Just
it's
do
so
what you
obvious.
want. Exactly. Like do it. But if you're kind of more on the fence, you like multiple of them, you're kind of indifferent a little bit. You're like, I could see myself doing either or. Maybe this is where you want to start balancing out the pros and cons. And just from, there's a big one between characters and environments right off the bat. Characters are harder to get positions into as a junior compared to environments. There's a lot more environment that needs to be done, especially with the boom of open world games. So much Squarespace needs to be covered and concepts needs to be done. There's a lot more positions for environment artists than there are character concept artists, which are usually more senior people. There are juniors that get characters. I'm not saying they don't, but if you're indifferent and you like both, maybe it's something you want to balance and think about when making that decision.
Exactly, because there's some people I've met, who are like asking this question, and I'm like, well, which one do you like more? They're like, I just want a job.
Yeah.
Like for them, it's not as much about getting the exact, like say my perfect situation of, oh, I get to do exactly what I want. For a lot of people out there, it's no, I just want to work. Like for me, I like drawing, I like painting. How can I get a job? Like that's really what I want to do.
Yeah.
So in this case, I think that's a good perspective to have. Like if you want to maximize your chances of finding work easily, then yes, looking at what is available is a good way to see it.
Tends to be environments has a lot of positions, but again, we don't want to say do environment to get a job. If you don't like environments, it's going to be a really shitty time for you when you get that job and you now have to do multiple years of something you hate while you're working on your other skills. Like don't put yourself through that because you're going to burn out. You're going to hate the job you're doing. You don't want to do that either. So really be okay with whatever you pick to do as a job for multiple years. But yeah, if you really don't care which one you're doing, there are a lot of positions and environments. It's a little bit easier to get a job into for sure.
Exactly. And also I had to learn the hard way. That's not the right way to say it. I had to narrow my choice based on different reasons too, because I was in the boat where I wanted to be a character concept artist because when I was a kid, I used to draw characters only, exclusively. Yeah. But for me, doing them, like sometimes you have to try all of them to see which one really is like a job to you. Because for me, when I did the character concept homework for the classes, I realized, I really like characters, but I'm not sure it's a job for me specifically. I realized that environments were fun. Like I like to make environments. I liked the workflow. Yeah. It was exciting to do it. I saw myself having a good future if I just had to do that every day. I was like, great. For characters, I really liked characters, but something bugged me about having to do character concept art specifically. So I would have probably been annoyed personally, and I had to find that out myself, having to, do like 5 different variations of the same character, like here's different pants. For me, that was like annoying, but I could only find that out through trying it. So essentially, I would say give it a bit of time. Like try, if you're not sure, try the different things and really pay attention to how you respond to it. Like, okay, well, how did I feel when I was doing the environments? Over time, did I enjoy it? Was I bugged? All that kind of stuff. And maybe you might surprise yourself. Maybe you're like, you know what? After all this time, the environments they were a pain at the beginning, but now the workflow was really cool. Like, I really enjoy sitting down and doing environments. I can see myself doing this every day and not being too bugged about it. Because let's be honest, when you're on a job, it's different than when you're doing it for leisure. When you're doing art for yourself, there's different dynamics going on into, what motivates you to do it and what gets you to the finish line. When it's a job, you're really trying to complete a task. It's for someone else. Yeah. So in my case, it's funny. I liked characters more for the illustration aspect, but the environment stuff, I was like, I really don't mind having to do that every day. Yeah. So definitely consider that in part of the equation. Like, what would I not mind what would I not mind if I had to do it every day? Yeah. And that might lead you into a good decision.
Yeah, I think that's really important. You have to really weigh that out. Also, something to kind of consider is that don't write off something too soon. You might be learning environments. You'd be like, man, I really don't like this. I'm always frustrated. I'm always this and that. You might not like it just because at the moment it's hard and you're learning the fundamentals of environments. And once you get through that, you might love it a lot more afterwards. So it's the same with characters. You might really be struggling with anatomy and it makes you hate characters. But maybe once you kind of start nailing anatomy, it might be a lot more freeing to do characters and you might love it. So just keep that in mind. The feeling that you have towards something might be related to how inexperienced you are at it and maybe not because you truly hate it.
It's a very, I would say it's a trap that I don't want to call it a naive thing, but to be like, oh, I tried it. It sucks. I didn't enjoy it. And it's like you spent like maybe a month on it. It's like, it's of course you didn't like it. It's like, it's your first time trying it. It's usually hard. Sometimes, at least for me, I didn't have a lot of fun with, environments until 2 years in when I was like, you know what, I actually start to like what I was making. So keep that in mind. Like a lot of the time, this is a long-term thing, and you may not. I wouldn't place all the judgment early on because, let's be honest, like if you make something and you're like you think it's bad, it's hard to have a good time. Sometimes it's normal.
And the reality of it is, no one likes to just suck at something, right? Like it's a shitty feeling to suck at something. Yeah. And if you're picking concept art and you're picking art in general as a field, you're gonna suck a long time.
It's gonna be like you're gonna go through a lot of what you consider bad art. You're gonna be making bad art for a while.
Yeah. And
art's hard, man.
And even when you get a job, that feeling of thinking your own stuff is bad is still going to be there. Like you're going to then be surrounded by seniors and more experienced people, and you're going to look at your stuff being like,
it's still there. Yeah,
it's still there. And then when you get more experience, then the pressure of having to perform at a certain level starts kicking in, and you're still going to look at your stuff and they're like, still not that good. It just, I guess the thing is you need to be comfortable with other aspects of this field. You need to really enjoy the process, right? If your only source of enjoyment is being good, that might not be enough to fuel you towards doing this, right? Like, enjoy the process. I enjoy the problem solving. Like, I really do love solving the problems of design, and I love that. It's like doing a puzzle, and I think it's great. Okay, I love my brain at the end of the day being fried is an awesome feeling. It's like a workout for your brain. I love it. So find something you really truly enjoy throughout the process, because you really should be at peace and enjoying that 8 hours you're working and stuff. To an extent, not every day is going to be great, but you should enjoy it to an extent and enjoy what you do. And you can't have your enjoyment be based off what you think of your own work, because that's not gonna end well if that's where your enjoyment comes from.
Yeah, like it's a long journey. Yeah, there has to be a force that kind of pulls you, that isn't just about making the best art always. Yeah, sometimes you may make one that's like, yeah, it's great, but a lot of the time it's the pursuit of it, which is, at least for me, it was the pull force. It's like, man, this is a super meaningful thing. I know I suck right now, but this journey of getting better, that for me is what's making me want to continue. That's like the fire within. So if you can find that and have like a relationship with the work that is based on improvement, then I think you're in a better spot, because maybe it's a modern thing where we always want things now. Like it's always about like getting the payoff now. It's like, when you play, maybe it's video games' fault. It's like you go into a video
games,
and then you're automatically like you doing cool shit right out the gate. But when it comes to like these skills that take like years to develop, sometimes that isn't the case. So
so you're just like amazing out the box at Apex? You don't have to get better at it?
I'm talking about more like campaign games. Or like,
okay.
No, Apex is its own thing. That's like you just you're in like they drop you in hell itself. You're like, and then someone like tap strafes into your face like.
I'm sure a lot of people don't even know what tap strafing is.
Some streamer like tap strafes behind you and like one clips you and you're like,
But yeah,
you know.
Yeah, if you know. Maybe we'll do an episode on gaming lingo and talk about video games more in depth.
The pains of Apex.
But yeah, I agree with you. I think we should segment probably to generalist. Probably talk about that because that's the big one.
Let's talk about more like the realities of each thing. So maybe we can paint a picture of like what's required of an environment artist versus a character artist versus a prop artist.
What is required of a environment artist?
Well, I'm glad you asked.
You kind of dabble in it a bit. I mean, I guess.
Yeah, I'm like a little, every once in a while.
You've done it a bit, I guess, on a few games here and there.
Yeah. But I'll talk a bit about environments. Maybe you can talk about your experience with props, and then we can say what we know about characters.
Yeah.
Let's do that. So let's say you're curious about being an environment concept artist, what that's like. You're like, landscapes could be cool, but like, what really, I want to decide. Like, what do I want to do?
Always establishing shots. That's all you do.
It's always cool, amazing vistas. Are like, oh my god, wow.
Yeah, that's all you do as an environment artist.
It's not that. With environment, concept art, you really have to learn maybe things that are a little more dry. Perspective being one of them. You have to master that sort of thing, like perspective, drawing really accurately, in 3/4 views, all that kind of stuff. So technically it's way more precise in that sense, and it could turn a lot of people off. I've definitely experienced it myself, where I'm like, man, that looks amazing, and then you realize getting into it, it's like, shit, there's so many grids you have to make sometimes, and everything has to be accurate, because like if you let's say a city from far and it just feels right, but then you like look from far, you're like, oh my god, it's like tilting, or it's like not in the right, it's not matching the view. So there's all these technical things that might be, like the character artist probably won't have to worry about. You can just kind of focus on the costuming. The perspective can maybe be a little looser than normal, but for environment artists, it's really like required that you don't mind getting over that hurdle. So that would be
especially with like cityscapes and stuff where you even see the perspective lines, right? You might get some leeway with mountains and stuff, but like when we're starting to take away those organic things, you might have a little bit less leeway. It gets even tighter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that can definitely be a challenge for some people. Environments are, I've never actually had to answer this question. Like, what would you have to know?
Well, you need to know level design restrictions.
You definitely have to play with. Yeah, you have to understand like how to work within constraints of space.
Yeah,
in a game for sure. So, once let's say you know everything about like or a lot about what generally it takes to design like the language of an environment, so it makes sense design wise. Yeah, you have to be comfortable like mocking up spaces maybe in 3D. Yeah. And then finding out a design solution that conforms to, let's say, certain ratios of space. Maybe there's like a cover to block gunfire or something like that. So you have to respect those things. And then you have to basically what they would call art it up.
Yeah.
And think of visual solutions with those in mind. So that's something that would definitely have to be, ironed out.
And some games are more strict than others. Like you might have a little bit more leeway on a single player game, but with my experience with COD for multiplayer, level design is king. Like, it's so strict. Like, you don't get to move a box. If there's a gray box there, it's there. Make it work. Like, it's
Yeah, like figure it out. Is it a crate? Is it a car?
it needs to stay there. There are rare cases when you can go and be like, is there a way we can move that? But 9 out of 10 times it's no, we can't move that. That needs to be there for balancing reasons.
Exactly.
So,
I would say too, sorry, this might take me a little more time to explain. I've never really jumped into it in this angle. Definitely architecture. It's like, it's one of those things where if you have an interest in architecture and you really like to explore, you know, building architectures, also understanding, you know, what makes a space work, you know, how interiors feel good. Like, let's say if you had to do an interior, it's not just, okay, make a room. It's like, no, like there's so many different aspects of what makes an interior function. So if you're making an interior that's comfortable, well, you have to be interested or be like, okay, well, you have to be sort of into that. So if you have a fascination whatsoever with spaces, I would say environments is great because you'll do a lot of that. You know, you'll have to figure out, you know, what makes a certain space conform to a game properly. Let's say it's like a boss level and you're like, okay, well, we need to make it look like big and menacing. It's like an arena or for a fight. It's like, you have to know, okay, well, what makes that feel like that? And that will be architectural fundamentals, basically.
And there might be like limitations. They might come in and be like, okay, these assets of explosive barrels, the character can pick them up and throw it. We need them to be placed in this, and this spot. So you know that, okay, those spots are filled with that. I need to take that into account. I can't move them. Like, it's important for the gameplay. The boss comes out of this sized hole. I need to respect the size of that hole. Like, there's sometimes you're going to get a lot of things that maybe you're not really going to realize this in school. You're only really going to get hit with it when you start working. And, you know, this is your job. These constraints exist for characters. They exist for props. They exist for environments. You're going to deal with constraints. Your job is not to create new problems. Your job is to solve problems, to make it look cool while taking everybody else's limitations that they've let you know about or the art directors let you know about and finding a solution that works, taking them into account. And that's really where your job is coming in. And that's why we like to phrase it as you're like a problem solver. Like, you
really are. What's the best visual solution? You know? Yeah, definitely. Good points. I also want to mention, you know, 3D is very common nowadays. So if you have, you know, an interest in 3D, I think it plays to being an environment concept artist these days. People who are really good at 3Ds have an amazing, I would say, edge in being an environment artist. It gives you so much more possibilities. Blender is so good these days. You can do so much, especially more than like a while ago. So if you enjoy the 3D workflow, great. Environment concept artist would be a great direction. Also, you know, lighting and cinematography, you'll have to know way more about, you know, cameras and lighting as an environment concept artist than a character artist or a prop artist. It doesn't matter as much because it's not really about the shot for a character artist or prop artist.
But the design.
It's isolated on a page. But for an environment artist, like, you have to wear an illustrator's hat all the time. So every environment artist, I would say, at least most environment artists I've met, have a deep appreciation for composition, like making amazing compositions. And that's what got me into it. I was like, damn, like I saw, you know, be honest, like, you know, the Naughty Dog artwork back in the day, or even still nowadays. And I was like, sheesh. Like,
that was the reaction you had. You just yelled that out anywhere you were. You're like, sheesh.
I was like, damn, son.
I doubt you did that. I doubt you did that. You're in the middle of like a Starbucks and you're like, damn, son.
Damn, son. Those shapes. But I fell in love with it because I was like, wow, it's so elegant how, like, this picture, as a picture, not just the design. I was like, it's just so beautiful as like a shot. Like, just put it as my wallpaper. For me, that's what got me in environment concept art. If you, the one listening, you're trying to make a decision, if you have like a deep like calling to be like, damn, like composition and like amazing vista mood shots and kind of that kind of stuff really appeals to you, environment artist sort of has to do that on the job quite often. So that is definitely something to take into consideration. Beyond that, you know, I don't know. Can you think of anything else?
Those are the big ones. I mean, you'll be working a lot with the level designers and stuff like that. I'm trying to think what else. Something that's common, at least was common for me, and I'm sure you've experienced that. Like there comes a point, pre-production, there's a lot more freedom, but when you're in post-production, it's not uncommon for them to be like, hey, do you mind looking in engine and try to reuse some of the assets that are there so we don't have to build a bunch of brand new assets? If you can reuse some of the textures, reuse some of the props that we've already designed. And so, that's something be mindful about. You're going to have to learn how to go in the engine, look through the assets that have been designed already and that are made, and bring those in, and be, sympathetic to that. So, again,
I found out another angle, actually. So a lot of, let's say, environment concept artists who are getting into it, there's kind of like a misconception sometimes where it's like you see all these really, really polished mood shots on ArtStation. You're like, damn, that's like, I guess what I'm doing all the time. But in reality, not really. A lot of the time, your day is split up into a lot of research. So you're researching like what would help you with your current task, whether it be like figuring out the look of a location, or it could be like polishing a very specific part of a game. So a lot of it is researching stuff. So you'll find like, I don't know, like 10 pictures of a ground floor or textures, or like if you're doing, let's say, an abandoned building, you're finding like the ways that buildings look when they're abandoned, like the materials, the way things look when they're like falling apart, rust, all that kind of stuff. So you're finding all these specific references that will help you make your concept, but also be useful for the team. There's a lot of that. And beyond that, you'll be doing a lot of maybe less sexy work that's not the mood shots, like line art. You'll be doing a lot of quick line over passes.
Line art is sexy and fun. Well, don't say that.
I mean, I agree, but a lot of the time it's
take that back. Take it
it's
back.
Not
now.
in the illustrative sense. It's not in the for the beauty's sake sense. It's really about solving a problem. Like you're really a designer. You're wearing a design hat. You're not wearing an illustrator hat.
Don't listen.
And what that really means is like the illustrator is trying to make a really beautiful picture, and that's kind of where the value is. But for a designer, you're trying to give a design solution. So when someone else sees it, maybe in another department, it could be like a level artist, they're like, "Oh, I get it," and then your design helps them with their work. So in this case with games, sometimes let's say there's like a gray block of an area, they're just like, just do a quick line art, pass over it to help the level artist figure out what this area is. You don't get to do like the sexy, amazing mood shot all the time. A lot of the time it's like, okay, well, you can't spend like 2 weeks on this. Like, take a day and use lines and then put photos pointing to like what it should be. And then just give that as like almost like a guide for the other departments. And that is a lot of what games is like. It's not all of it, but there is a section of the pipeline, which is that. So know that it's not only just making these sexy shots that you see in ArtStation. It's a lot of that. It's a lot of rough compositions,
solving problems,
that kind of stuff. Solving problems.
You're just solving problems all day for different people.
We should just be called solving problems artists.
Problem solving artists.
2D problem solvers.
And a great then we'll go on to character stuff. But a great thing that I heard, I forget who told me this. I think it was maybe a coworker of mine. But keep in mind that 3D artists can't model brushstrokes. So sometimes it's fun to be...
Really?
Sometimes it's super fun to be painterly and loose and very stylistic. But keep that in mind. 3D artists have different levels of experience. Some of them are juniors, some of them are seniors. So maybe the senior ones who have a lot of experience can take that creative freedom and look at the concept, interpret it, and they'll roll with it. They're fine with it. But be understanding that sometimes there will be a junior that gets your concept, and maybe that might be a little bit more confusing to be looking at something that's super painted. Like, I don't really understand what that is. In your head, it's a bolt, but for them to it's just a paint stroke. I don't get it. So, it might be cool and juicy to make it look like that, but sometimes it just may add to the confusion. It might add more problems where now they need to come back, and it adds friction. They're like, I don't understand this part of your concept. Can you clarify it? And things like that. So be mindful. Other people are getting your work. You're passing this along to help somebody else's day and their life to do their job afterwards. Be mindful of this.
100%. We love to make the pretty pictures for ourselves, and I struggle with this for sure a ton. but it really helps to see that you're part of a team.
Yeah.
And it changes the outlook on why you're doing things. It's like,
Yeah.
it feels that way when you're working, you're just alone with your art.
Yeah.
But just remember that, like, maybe go say hi to the other artists. You know, it's like you're really part of a group and you want to help the other person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sure there's other things regarding environment artists I missed, but let's move to props actually.
Okay.
Take
so
the floor.
We talked about it. Everybody's got to do props. But let's say you're interested in going maybe more in detail. You want to specialize in more hard surface. You like vehicles, you like mechs, you like guns, spaceships, all that fun stuff. I think now we're getting into a point where 3D is kind of just like baseline. If you want to do hard surface prop stuff, I think if you want to go into that, 3D is a reality. You're giving these concepts in a lot of different views. You need to be showing them from 3/4 front views. You need to be showing them from the back view, the front view, how it opens up, and an inside view. And this is becoming the reality of what these kind of like complex props and vehicles and weapons and spaceships are becoming. So having a deep like understanding, at least a surface level understanding of like how things work, how things function, like putting on that engineering hat, even though you're not an engineering hat, is really, really important, because these games now, you don't just see a spaceship in the sky and that's it. The characters are entering the spaceship. They're like pulling the levers and like pressing a pedal and lifting off, and like the flaps of the plane are now like moving and it's like adjusting while it's flying in space. And like somebody has to think of all these parts that are moving, and the person thinking of it is you if you're designing it. So you need to start having that hat on. Like, how does this thing work? If your spaceship is like this cylindrical thing with rings that spin around it, how do these rings spin to create a sort of propellant for it to move? Like, you need to figure that system out. So like props is not just drawing a crate, drawing a computer, drawing a spaceship from the outside and that's it. No. What does the spaceship look like idle? How does it look like in flight? What does the inside of the cockpit look like? Does it need to carry stuff? How does the inside of that area looks like? What is the mechanism to clamp on and carry this stuff? Like, you have to start really like, that's what it's becoming, to do like specialization into hard surface stuff. So I think if you're interested in that, I personally love it, but you gotta love trying to solve these problems of how these mechanics work. And they're not just real life mechanics. You have to make them sci-fi. You have to make mechanics maybe that don't exist 100% and take the tech from the game and apply it to the mechanisms of what you're designing. It's a lot of fun, but 3D becomes a amazing asset to do these things if you have to account for all these views, right? You don't want to be hand drawing every single one of these views. The time it would take you would be ridiculous. And to match all the angles together, again, it's a ridiculous amount of time that you're wasting when you can be designing and solving more problems. So 3D is just, I think, at this point becoming baseline for more hard surface specialization. I don't think you can avoid it that much anymore, at least in a work scenario. For personal stuff, do whatever you want. That's the big thing. Hero props, things that interact with the player, there's going to be gameplay elements, there's going to be gameplay restriction. One I can speak of is when I worked on Crash Team Racing for vehicles, all the characters, they had like baby characters, like regular size characters, and the big characters with their elbows sticking out. So no doorway could be past a certain height to account for the characters whose elbows would stick out, because any character could go on any vehicle. So you had to have the doors at a certain height. The headrest couldn't be past a certain height because you had the baby characters, and if the seats were too high, you wouldn't see the character. And in a racing game, even though you're racing a car, the characters were the stars. Like, people played this racing game for the Crash characters that they know and love. So you have all these gameplay constraints you got to think of, just like environment, but they're just different kind of gameplay constraints. Sometimes you're going to have to think about, like, maybe, I don't know, you have a game and they don't want to show transparent materials because they can't actually count the amount of bullets. Like, games do that. They don't want to, but some other games don't care. They will show the amount of bullets in a clip and show it emptying. So, be aware of that. So that might be a limitation. Maybe all the weapons need to transform. Like, Bloodborne's a game where they had like these weapons that had two forms for a lot of them. So maybe that's something you have to consider from a gameplay mechanic.
So there's a lot of constraints.
Yeah.
what would be like telltale signs for someone to be like, okay, it seems like you should go into props? Like what would be like the things that maybe you've experienced or other people tend to like that gets them into props as like a main focus?
Yeah, if you really like sci-fi, that tends to be already a good check mark, because a lot of hard surface design is sci-fi. You don't need a prop person to design a carriage for a horse usually, unless it's like a twist on it that's like going to be mechanically different. It's like for League of Legends, that's a mix of steampunk and other elements, right? But usually it's going to be more sci-fi oriented. If you love figuring out how things work, how things like open up, and you really want to be like, yeah, I want to make this thing function and like work. Like I want to be able to get into this spaceship and it feels like it's a real thing. If you love doing that, you're probably going to love doing hard surface prop
attention to
design.
detail, I would say. Yeah. Because you get to, when you really isolate on a prop, this is my experience with it, it's like a very all-encompassing attention or understanding on the object that you're making.
Yeah.
Which can be different, let's say, in an environment where like you kind of hint at something, but you're not like looking up at it close. There's not as much attention to like maybe very nuanced things about how it works. With the prop artist, there is. You get to really go down to the nuts and bolts.
That was really bad. That was rough.
I know. I had the opportunity, so why not?
The opportunity to just hurt me on the inside. But yeah, I think that would be the biggest thing. Like that's one thing you just have to be aware of signing up for this. 3D is going to be a part of your workflow, and you're going to have to get comfortable. Like you can't just be like, oh, I don't have to worry about what the inside of the spaceship looks like or the inside of this thing looks like. You're probably the person they're going to ask to figure that out after you've designed the spaceship.
Super goggles for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like if you're the one designing the spaceship, you're probably the person designing the inside of the spaceship with it afterwards. So like make your life easier, think about it ahead of time.
Yeah, like a lot of the time, like those type of prop artists, like you have the best skills of the whole team to figure out those really design heavy problems that require like an expert essentially to show them in the most realized way, so that can be given to the team and they can use that as a template or like a guide to make it in the engine, try it out, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and some companies will do that. They'll just take your 3D and dump it in. And that's again a great plus point for you if you're able to give that to people, whether it's freelance or at a studio. That looks really good if you're giving your 3D to people nowadays. Like that's becoming more and more common. Also, this is not a must, but again, these are just extra points. If you can do rough animations for your stuff and you show like an animation of how the cockpit opens or like this part of the vehicle transforms out or something, if you're showing it in that motion, it doesn't have to be perfect or seamless or anything like that. You're not an animator, but if you show that, it's one, easier to sell the idea of the design, and two, like it helps everybody get on the same page of what it's supposed to do and how it works. You're showing that you really understand the stuff that you're designing and how it works. And again, it's going to help you out really, because people want those kinds of people that know how to make things work and function, especially with the level of detail we're getting into games. Games are not like just 50 polygons on an item anymore. Like
I miss when Lara Croft was like a triangle. Those are the good old days.
Just the but like you look at games even many years ago, you look at games like Titanfall, like that's been out forever. Like people had to design the interior of those cockpits because you were constantly getting in and out of these mechs while fighting, and it was like very seamless. So like there's tons of games now where it's like it's very normal for these things to open up and move and transform, whether it's mechs, guns, vehicles, or whatever. It's becoming more and more of a normal thing, and technology is able to support this kind of stuff. So now people want to put more of it in because it's really cool to have that kind of stuff in a game. It makes people be like, whoa, like all the, like for example, look at Star Citizen. Like look at their planes. Like look at somebody go into one of those and you hear all like the stuff just moving, the visor coming in, and like you can interact with like it's insane. Like it's insane. Like I'm not going to get into the whole like it's been in development for X amount of time. What I'm talking about.
It makes sense. Just, I mean, look what they're doing.
Yeah, but like just look at the vehicle. Like watch somebody go into that thing. That is nuts. The attention to detail, like it really is insane. It's like a real life working spaceship. Like it's pretty nuts. So that's where games are heading, at least in the realistic aspect. People are liking that kind of stuff. So if
you enjoy that level of thinking, prop artist might be for you.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned, and I think I'll add too, it seems like if you really, there's this crossover of, you could be considered a 3D modeler in a company and you're like a 3D modeler, but there are a lot of people who are exclusively using 3D modeling programs and they're also concept artists.
Yeah.
And so I would say that if you have a love for, getting into Blender or Fusion or 3D Code or all these different, even VR, actually, VR is really popular right now.
Yeah.
If you have a love for just getting in there, modeling objects and making that your thing, but you don't want to be necessarily like the guy or the girl in the company that's just modeling stuff and maybe has to worry about like triangles and polygons and quads and all that kind of stuff, optimization. Maybe concept art, a prop concept artist is the position for you, because then you get to really focus on the design of it, creating it from the ground up. And you get to be the modeler as well. So you could those things I think used to be a little less uncommon, let's say 10, 15 years ago, but now it's like super common.
Yeah. And you need to have design skills. Like,
really?
You have design classes? No, but you need design for everything. But like, the anatomy of props is design. Like you need, like your design skills need to be there. It's going to be very clear if your design skills are not that strong. If you're doing hard surface props, it's going to like really stick out. People are going to notice right away. You can't hide it. So really practice designing stuff. Like you're not going to make amazing designs at the start. Study other people's designs. Why are these designs working? Why are they interesting? What kind of shapes make something sci-fi? I promise you, a lot of people just go for the obvious stuff, Halo. But a lot of stuff can be sci-fi. I've seen people take like crustacean shape language and make something feel sci-fi with it. The range for the shapes you can use to make things feel sci-fi is really, really wide. So really study other people's hard surface designs, how they work, how they function, how they made it look sci-fi, and learn from it and get really good at design, because you're gonna have to get real comfortable with that.
Yeah, definitely. Good, great advice. Anything else to help people choose prop artists, or not prop artists, prop concept artists? Sorry, I had a lot of coffee today, guys. Is there anything else that would help be like a guiding, like a question that would be like, oh yeah, maybe you should be a prop artist?
I don't think there's anything else. I think with what I said, I've either scared people away from it or I've enticed people towards it. One of the two. I don't think I've put somebody's in the middle after hearing that, but
great.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I think it's awesome. I think it's super cool. I love looking at people who do hard surface design stuff. It's like so fun. And yeah, if you love that kind of stuff, if you look at like a piece of equipment on Pinterest and you're like, damn, that is cool, look at how that works, probably you'll like doing that kind of stuff.
You might be a telltale sign.
Like you look at environments, you go, man, the lighting's so juicy. I look at a retro cassette player, I'm like, look at those buttons, they're like so cool how this opens up, and I'm freaking out about that. So it's like that might be a sign that you like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
So I don't know, if you like characters and you're always looking at the pose, you're like, look at the way the muscles are moving and twisting, you probably like characters.
You might it might be another sign.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, let's talk about the last one and maybe jump in a bit about generalism. Then we can go to the visual section. Cool. So yeah, characters. Something me and Nick don't have the most experience with, but I generally, I've been in production many times.
We know people that do characters as well that we've talked to.
Exactly. We have friends who do it full time. I would say I can walk through a bit about being a character concept artist to help out. Sorry, by the way, if I'm slowing down. I'm having like a caffeine crash a bit. So the coffee is doing its thing on the negative side. But yeah, characters. I would say, for me, why I like characters, at least coming up, I just love drawing like the coolest poses, you know, the warrior with the sword when I was a kid. So
People relate to characters.
Yeah, people relate to characters, and a lot of time, like, I would say it's one of the first things that people tend to draw, you know.
They don't relate to a crate, but they relate to a character.
Yeah, it's not like a, Timmy, oh, look at you're drawing a barrel. Oh, wow. You know?
Wow, that's so cool.
That's a great barrel. Oh, look, a teacup.
You really relate to that barrel.
No, it's usually you know, oh, I drew Goku, or I drew, I don't know, some other character. It could be like SpongeBob or something like that. But I think a lot of people connect to people. Like you said, we love to, you know, make a character up. It feels really cool to like invent, you know, what they're doing, like, you know, their armor. I was obsessed with armor back in the day. I used to play a lot of WoW. I just outed myself. I'm sorry.
Cool armor that opens up.
Yeah. So I used to be obsessed with drawing like armored characters, typical, you know, very typical like teenage boy kind of thing, I guess. I don't know. So if you have the inclination to like be really drawn to like just drawing characters, then that's maybe a telltale sign that character art is for you. Anything you would add to that?
Love anatomy.
Do you have to love it though?
Yeah, I think you kind of do. I think.
Okay, you continue while I get some water so I can fix this caffeine issue. Keep going.
Awesome. Yeah, I think you have to love anatomy to a degree. Like, I think it's very easy to not like anatomy when you start it, because it's definitely one of the hardest fundamentals I think out there to learn. But yeah, like, I mean, the people who do characters really, really well, really good at anatomy for one, and you know, they probably end up loving it. They kind of like do these like the coolest, juiciest like hand shapes and like poses, and they'll like define the muscle in a way that it's like at one point you just have such an appreciation for the human anatomy. You've kind of just learned to like exploit it to make it look so cool. That's such a bad choice of word, but like
exploit the anatomy.
You know, you got to a point where you just kind of love the human anatomy, and like you just appreciate like how it just works, how it functions, how all these muscles are attached, create these like different like bumps and all these things when they're like rotated and the light hits it from a certain angle. Like again, hands are really hard, but like some people, the way they do hands, oof, like it's insane. Like it's so cool when they really know how to do it. Like, so some people like they really, really know their anatomy, and I don't know if you have to be like that crazy with it, but it definitely doesn't hurt if you are that crazy with it.
It's I think you nailed it on the head. Like I would say a character artist usually, like almost all the time, has a deep appreciation for figure art.
Yeah.
So there it's almost like its own thing where it's kind of like, actually it's not really like perspective, but you could technically, if you know, you wanted that path, be a fine artist and just draw the figure or paint the figure for the rest of your life. And for a lot of people, that is their job and their passion, and they don't want to do anything else but that. I think every character concept artist gets that. They understand where that comes from, and they have, like, I would say that there's a deep part of themselves that loves that. So if you see, let's say figure art, let's say it's drawing the figure live, capturing the gesture, all that kind of stuff, and we can explain what that means after if you don't know what gesture is. But if you kind of love capturing something about the figure, then that might be a telltale sign that you might love being a character concept artist, because yes, you're doing a design of a character. There's like, let's say, you know, you got the scar on the face, you got the costume, and they're doing something, but underneath there is that figure drawing skill set, which is, you know, really good understanding of posing. There is, you know, the knowledge of, you know, how muscles are attached, how the skeleton is built, all that kind of stuff. And that is the knowledge that everything's built on. Because if you don't know that, then people won't be able to believe, first of all, that your character is legit. They'll be like, something's off. Like, why is their neck not attached to the body properly? It could be anything. Or it could just feel stiff. That's also a big challenge people have. So all this to say that is, I would say, a prerequisite to, you know, your trajectory as a character concept artist.
Yeah, I agree. And like anatomy and gesture are two, like, I think the two biggest foundations there are to characters. Like, they're really the two most important things you really need to nail down and have a good understanding of. There's other a lot of things that you need to know as well besides that, but those are the two big ones. If like your characters are stiff, your characters do not have good anatomy, it really doesn't matter how good everything else on top of it is, like that's going to stick out like a sore thumb. So those things do need to be ironed out. Usually first, they need to be some of your strongest foundations for characters. Another thing that you actually have to do a lot that maybe sometimes can get overlooked is folds and clothes. Like you do a lot of folds and clothes.
Yeah, you have to
Like,
understand like
yeah.
how wrinkles happen,
Yeah.
like there's like tension points in
tension
fabric,
points, yeah.
all that kind of stuff. Because, you know, unless the game you're working on is just naked people, like you're going to have to
Or it's like
put
all
something on
like
them.
medieval armor and there's no clothing underneath it. Like, okay, maybe you don't have to do folds, but there's going to usually be folds. You're going to have to deal with that.
So yeah, that would be like, the next step to it for sure. I guess that segues perfectly into costume design pretty much, because there is basically the aspect of, okay, well, I need to be able to kind of portray a character's story with the costume that the character's wearing. Not only the pose, not only like, you know, if this is a mean character, he's not just making a mad face. It's like, no, he has who he is written into his costume as well, or her costume.
Yeah, because that plays to the storytelling element. And a lot of these things, by the way, we're talking about in characters right now, but like that does apply to environments, that does apply to props, having that storytelling. There's ways to tell story through those things. But yeah, like one of the big things for characters, that'll be very obvious. The costume's going to tell a big story about this character. What faction are they a part of? You know, what they do for a living. Are they evil? Are they good? Are they, you're not really sure? All this stuff is going to, the costume is going to help tell that story. You know, the character's face, their expression, their pose are all going to tell that story. Somebody's really guarded, they might have their arms crossed. If somebody's like really charismatic, they might have a big smile, arms like wide out open and letting you in because they're very charismatic. Like these things are going to help tell a story. If that's a shy character, don't make him with a big smile, arms wide open. That doesn't really scream shy character. That screams very charismatic and happy storytelling. And the clothing will also, if you're doing really crazy colors, like neon colors, like super crazy shapes, that doesn't, again, scream shy character. That's very,
maybe they're in a super rainbow land where everyone has to wear those colors.
Maybe, but usually it doesn't.
I'm just trying to make your life difficult.
Trying to make it difficult, but usually it doesn't, right? So like what they're wearing is going to tell a story about the character, the person,
exactly,
or the alien. So
yeah. And there's a deep appreciation I find with the beauty of, let's say, the fashion of different eras and how different costuming works. Because for each, let's say, type of, you know, project you work on, you'll have to, in a sense, be interested in different things. So if you're, let's say, just designing like sci-fi people that have like very functional equipment, you'll have to kind of go down the rabbit hole of, okay, like how does a suit work? Like what makes a suit look like a suit, you know, to survive in space or whatever. If it's military, like, okay, well, what protects the body? Like where would, you know, armor be? Where would the soft points be? So,
and that's where the prop starts linking in, having that basic knowledge of props that we talked about at the start.
Yeah.
Like when you start doing these kind of things, like prop is linking in right now. Like when you have to start designing satchels on how they connect, maybe to hold the gun and things like that, like having an understanding of how these things work, like, and I think especially if it's a sci-fi game. So, you know, we talked about it a bit in environments, but you know, that's a good point. That's where that baseline linkage of props
it all links up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It all kind of comes together.
Exactly. Because, you know, you never know, like maybe your job might want, let's say the character has a backpack or something that's like jet boosters or something like that in a sci-fi game. Maybe, you know, this is the main character and you see that up close all the time in the game. So that's where the prop design will come in. You might have to go in and really figure out how this thing works in more precise detail. And that's where you sort of put the prop design hat on.
And especially in smaller teams, you're more likely to design that. Maybe in bigger teams, if it's that big of a prop that you see all the time, they might get a specialist to do it. But in smaller teams, especially probably indie studios, you're going to be the person doing that. Like that's for sure on 100%. Your plate to do it.
Yeah. And I guess another angle to see costuming is fashion. There's I would say a huge benefit in not only looking at, you know, okay, I need to, you know, make an evil character, evil stuff, you know, you make him in black
Suit
or
with a red tie.
or it's like he's just a big, triangular with a cape and he's got the hood, it's like that's evil. No, not always. I think channeling the creativity of runway fashion and all those weird, wild ideas and finding really unique ideas from those sources, I think it makes really interesting character concepts. And I think a lot of character concept artists do appreciate that. So if you have a fascination with, maybe runway fashion or very like unique costumes and stuff like that, if you like to go really niche and find those interesting ideas, it might be for you to be a character concept artist as well.
And look at different countries too. Like if you love like different outfits and design, like so many different cultures and different like areas in the world have such cool like outfits over the years and stuff. Like there's so much to pull inspiration from, not just where you're from. So there's a lot to like really like look around the world what exists out there. Some really cool stuff.
So much so much. That's like actually a huge point, like culture.
Yeah.
If you, let's say, if you give yourself a challenge, like maybe it's like, I want to do a Mongolian war chief or something for your portfolio, man, like if you deep dive into like why they wear things, there's usually a why to everything.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably one of the biggest realizations you'll have as a concept artist is like, you are the person that understands the why to everything visual.
Yeah.
So, actually I like that quote. We should post it like on the wall or something like that.
A little motivational poster with a cat on it.
Understand the why of every visual.
There's a little cat hanging on a fence, like,
exactly.
Okay, yeah.
But essentially that's what we have to know. But not to tangent. Yeah, it's like finding out the why to every, piece of culture. Like maybe there's like some decorative elements, maybe there's like certain colors, like why? And usually there's a reason. You can deep dive in like every culture and find out what makes these people wear these. Like, there's usually a function, maybe there's like a ritualistic aspect to it. Maybe it's just, tradition, all that kind of stuff. If that fascinates you, also another telltale sign that, maybe a character concept position is for you.
Yeah.
I would say another one is, and this is more why I liked characters, is I loved just bringing a person to life. There's something really appealing about, I have a blank paper and, in like a day, like there's going to be a person, you're going to be like, wow, that's a person. Like there's something about bringing someone to life. If you're, let's say, trying to make, this war chief, there's something cool about making your own, let's say, version of what a war chief would be like to you and making someone see it and kind of like them being immersed in whatever character you created. There's something really appealing to that. And I think a lot of character concept artists have that same sort of drive.
Yeah, I agree. And also another, I guess, area, it's kind of part of anatomy and stuff, but if the face is visible, like the face holds a lot of personality usually of the character, and it's something you need to get really good at, because people look at, like, everyday people, like we're talking your friends, your parents, whatever, look at people all the time. If there's something off with that face, they will notice. They won't know why, but they will notice, because we see people every day. It's something everybody sees. So yeah, making sure, like, you can spend easily a year just practicing faces alone if you wanted to.
Easily.
Like very easily. Like being comfortable doing different expressions, like showing that personality to the face through the subtleties of that. Like it's not always as expressive as like mouth wide open, the eyes like a face of shock. Sometimes it's very subtle to show like a kind of hint of like slyness or something. Like it's not always the big expression, and being able to really understand the face, the muscles in the face, the structure of the skull, all these things to be able to show those emotions is something that's going to take a while to practice and learn and develop that skill. So something definitely, if you have a mask that covers that, then you have a different problem. How do you show that personality and emotion without the face? Because the face does a lot of heavy lifting sometimes. So that actually becomes even harder to do it without it. But yeah, if you can, that's something you're really going to have to get used to and comfortable with. Draw the head, draw the face a lot. Get used to that.
Yeah, we have, I think how I like to explain it is, when you look at, let's say, a rock in an environment, you're like, if it's a bit off, like you won't care, because it doesn't really have anything to do with you functioning as a human in the world that we live in. But when it comes to a face or like, someone's intention, as humans, we're wired to like pick up on like, billions of subtle cues.
Yeah.
So if the face is, let's say, a little off, or if something is like misaligned, like your subconscious brain is like going like something's wrong, something's wrong, because it's like we're so highly developed. We're talking like, evolution basically.
And we don't mean off like the character's missing an eye, because that's not off. People have missing eyes. What we mean by off is like if the eye socket is like misaligned, that's off, because skulls don't usually have misaligned sockets. Like that doesn't really make sense. It's like stuff like that it's like that just doesn't add up. Like that doesn't make sense. Because stuff like when people have like damage, disfigurement things, because you will have to make, if you do characters, rip off the band-aid, you will probably have to look at some of that stuff, especially if you work in a horror game. You will have to look at some of this stuff.
It's true.
Just ripping off the band-aid now.
It can happen.
Disfigurement, like things like damage to the face happens.
How did we get here?
Happens in a certain way. It doesn't just, you don't just willy-nilly do anything, right? Like there's something it's so disgusting to
You don't have to go into too much detail. I know you're enjoying it a bit, but
I'm not enjoying it. No, I don't have a good tolerance for this kind of stuff. So like, I'm just saying in general, like usually when like let's do something that's not that bad, like a cut. Let's say somebody got like cut through the eye and stuff like that. It will look a certain way. Like it does. You don't just randomly do a line and a cut like that. There's usually a certain way it happens. Usually the start of it is more shallow than the middle part, because usually it's the top of the blade, and then when it gets in the middle part, like an arc, right? If you just draw an arc of a circle, it's going to get a lot deeper in the center part of the cut, and then it's going to be more shallow at the edges. So a lot of the damage and a lot of the worst area is going to be in the center. Again,
where's this going, Nick?
You're gonna need to sometimes know this stuff, because it's like visually you need to show it, right? To make it feel, because people have seen cuts like these, again, like, and to tie back to people see these things in real life. People see cuts, people see like missing limbs and stuff like that. That is a part of our life. So there's a certain way to show it that, like, how does it believable? How does it happen? There's like a certain way to it. Like,
but yeah, I think I agree.
This is really
I agree with the point. Just to clarify the point, yes, like you can have subtle, let's say getting the blade marks could be useful, but at the same time, like it's more just like just knowing how to draw a human properly, and more specifically the face. Like it's just more like slight things that are off, like you can't even notice it sometimes. It's like where it's just like it feels like the person's kind of like in this uncanny valley area. It doesn't really, sometimes it has nothing to do with, let's say, maybe like the character didn't have the hat on the proper way. Sometimes it's literally just because like things are just misaligned so ever slightly, and the artist wasn't aware of that. So now there's like a weird feeling when people see it. It's hard to explain without putting an example, but if you look at enough, let's say,
example,
look at enough work, you'll be like, okay, well, this portrait like kind of feels right, but there's something off, and usually it's something very subtle. And that's basically the road that you as a character concept artist have to go down, is you really perfecting that craft of capturing a person's face and their expression in a very natural way. And that's kind of the magic word, natural, because you can kind of, this is actually a really good exercise, but if you, let's say, copy a photo one-to-one, sometimes it'll look really weird. But if you understand, let's say, how gesture works, and let's say how to capture an expression very, very in a very energetic way, you can actually look at maybe like Disney animators and how they draw faces. Yes, they may not be realistic, but they capture so much more natural, believable energy in the face, and that's something that you'll have to master to avoid that weird, oh, it kind of looks a bit weird. Like, I don't trust that, because your subconscious brain that's been trained to recognize realistic, like natural, believable, trustable people will go off. So it's something like that.
Sorry for the gross tangent.
It's just like, I was just making sure, because it might be confusing. Like, what was the point of this again?
The point of it is that just understanding anatomy and how outside things can affect the anatomy. Because if you're working on, let's say, a horror game, you will have to draw gross stuff. And if you understand the anatomy, the gross stuff that you do and how things affect it will be a lot more believable.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I guess that was the point I was making in a very bad way of explaining.
No, it's okay. Just trying to tie it all to the uncanny valley kind of thing.
To clarify, I do not have a stomach for that kind of stuff. If I was asked to design some creature for a horror game that had like, I don't know, some like open like body or something, like, I don't know. I don't have the stomach to do that personally. I wouldn't be able to, but there's a lot of people that love horror stuff, love the kind of like gruesome
they don't mind. They'll look at like guts and
like, they'll look at pictures of guts. That's kind of weird.
Corpses
but like,
for like hours. They're like, this is great.
Yeah.
I'm exactly where I need to be right now.
You know, if you like looking at that kind of stuff, you might
have the great best job ever.
You might secretly be a serial killer, but you'd make a fantastic horror creature designer.
Yay, you found it. Yay. You fit in. You can finally be understood.
Yeah, if you're secretly a serial killer, become a concept artist and do stuff for horror games. There you go. We've solved the problem of crime.
Let's call that that's the podcast episode. How do serial killers become concept artists?
We've solved it. We've solved crime again. Here we
draw
are.
Your desires. Okay. It's bad. I think we're gonna.
That's a good segue right there.
Yeah, segue. So I have a few last comments about character concept artists, just so you know a little bit more about what it's like to be on the job.
Yep.
There's going to be a lot of costume iteration, so you're gonna have to enjoy or not mind the workflow of, okay, well, you know, they want like a million different like versions of the character.
Mm-hmm.
And that can go on in multiple steps. Like you can make multiple versions of the same character in the initial stages where it's like different armor. And then on the later stages where things are starting to get really more narrow and polished, it's like, okay, well, we just want like different versions of, let's say, the belt. Because they're, you know, you're really getting down to the nitty gritty. The big questions are answered of design. Yeah. So as a character concept artist, a lot of the times you will be doing a lot of iteration on that kind of side of things.
Especially if it's a main character, then you might be in that.
It might last years. It usually does last years, and you will be so sick of the main. No, I'm joking. But like,
it might get passed around at some point if it's the main character.
Always.
Like you're not doing it for years, it will get passed around, and because the story changes, the art director changes, something changes, and the character has to change. So yeah,
exactly. Another thing that may entice you to want to be a character concept artist is, showing, you know, you can do expression sheets a lot of the time to really sell what a character is like. You have to do expression sheets sometimes. There's like animations where you'll draw, let's say, I don't know, maybe the character does like an attack and you'll like draw it. You'll be like, hey, okay, well, character does this with his arms, does that, or does like a Kamehameha like this.
Like showing effects for the skills and stuff like that. Yeah, you're going to have to do that sometimes. So
that's part of the job as well. Yeah. I'm for sure there's a lot of other stuff, but that's generally kind of...
It's like a quick general kind of look into all of... Oh, we didn't talk about generalists.
We're going to do that now.
We're going to do that now. So you know there's 24 minutes on the timer.
I got it. I look at the time.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about generalist and why you shouldn't be... let's talk about generalist.
How dare you?
How dare I?
All the generalists out there are going...
How dare he say that?
Shit. No. So the generalist is a big topic. Because a lot of people want to know. They're like, man, I like everything.
I want to do it all.
Can I just do it all? And then you're just like, well, it depends. That's my answer, at least.
Yeah, and a lot of factors go into it. You can do it all. I'm definitely the more and more leaning on the side of no, as I think the industry evolves. I don't think it's a hard no. Like, I think there's a lot of places to be a generalist. I'm talking about a generalist as a student out of school to get a job. I'm not talking about being a generalist. You're in the industry. You like to do everything. You're a generalist, and that's what you end up kind of solidifying into. I'm talking about if your goal is to start working as a generalist of doing everything. I think that's more and more becoming a no. You kind of have to pick a lane. Not to say that it's impossible. Like if you're working at an indie studio, like we talked about before we did the podcast, like, yeah, you're probably going to have to be a generalist. Like they're not hiring like 7 concept artists at the studio. There's going to be like 2, maybe 3. And so you're going to have to wear many hats. Like, yes, if you work on a indie game, you will probably be a generalist. So there are places for that.
Yep.
In some cases in AAA studios, you might be a generalist, but I think that's becoming less and less, especially as the quality bar is getting higher and higher and higher for each of these things. You're not going to come out and be doing hard surface stuff in 3D, animating them while doing amazing anatomy for your characters and then understanding all the stuff for environments. Like that's a pretty tall list to tackle. Usually
getting
that
a
gets
job
built
is
over
already hard
time.
enough sometimes. So
Yeah.
why try? Like you have like only a certain bandwidth
Yeah.
to put into your portfolio. Now you have to split in 3.
Yeah.
Like great, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because sometimes how people do it is sometimes you'll see like environment artists, they love to do sci-fi environment stuff. And so they use a lot of 3D and then they take that 3D and transfer over to start doing like specialized hard surface, and they start doing like designing spaceships to put into their environments. And then they're like, what if I design this cool mechanical character in this thing? And then then they become like this hard surface generalist that does like, you know, props, does environments, does characters, like, and that generalist hat expands because of a love for something.
So maybe it comes from, maybe if you were to be a generalist, I don't know, this is something that just came up right now. You could find a synergistic aspect where you could introduce, let's say you're an environment concept artist and you just said like a sci-fi environment concept artist. You can introduce, yes, okay, here's like 10% of my portfolio is sci-fi props, because the skills translate super easily from being a sci-fi environment artist. And also, hey, like I did a character, it's covered in basically a suit, which is kind of like a prop. So you can kind of maybe find these openings where you could show that you could do the other things. And maybe, you know, you were saying like it could land you an indie job, maybe give you some opportunities in that sense. But I think, at least on my end, where a risk could happen, or like maybe it's just a different route, is if you're, let's say, trying to tell the world that, no, I'm like really good at all the things.
Yeah.
That can be done. I've seen people do it, but it's like, sometimes you have to just be realistic about where you're at, how much time it's going to take to do it.
Yes.
Because that could be a long road, when it could be easier, let's say, to maybe make 80% of your portfolio characters and get really good at that. And then, you can put a character in an environment, or you can have like a prop, and that be like the other 20%. That may be a better solution, because then when someone looks at your portfolio and they're trying to hire for characters, they'll be like, okay, great, he's a character artist. Yeah. Because if it was the opposite, it would be like you doing, let's say, 30, 30, 30 of all the things. They might be like, well, this person is like mediocre at all 3 things. Yeah. And that's because of the bandwidth issue. It's like you spent your time trying to get good at 3 things, and that's just harder than spending like all your time getting good at one thing.
That's what ends up happening a lot of the times with people that want to become a generalist. And that's kind of why I lead on the side of no. But again, like you said, time is a big factor. If you're just coming out of high school, you're not really in a rush. You're like, I got like 5-6 years. I'm just going to focus on getting really good at art. Or maybe you're even in high school and you're already interested in concept art. You know that that's what you want to do. You have so much time ahead. And you're like, I got plenty of time. I want to use that time to get really good at everything. Dude, go ahead. Like, you have so much time. If you have 7 years, that's a lot of years to do it all. But if you're like entering an intensive program and the goal is to get a job at the end of a year,
or from another country, and you don't want to get like deported.
You have to, because then you have to worry about visas. So you need to get a job if you're in a program and stuff. It's like, realistically, in a year and a half, are you going to be good at everything? Probably not.
You'd be like okay at everything, I would say. If you're going through an intensive.
You're making your life harder to get a job when you could be really good at something and then really catch the attention of people. Yeah. So again, we're not saying don't do it, but like just really think about it and be like, do you want to be okay at everything, or do you want to be really good at something? What do you think is going to catch
think about really where you're at, because it's a bandwidth issue. And also know that like, you don't necessarily have to view it as like, oh, I need to be a generalist before I can get a job, and that be the only solution. Like, you can always explore later down the road. Like, you know, for me, I wanted to be a character artist, so I learned some of those that knowledge, and then I was like, you know what, I don't really want to draw costumes a lot, so I switched to focusing full time on environments, and that took like a good 3.5 years before I landed my job, just focusing on environments. What's beautiful about that is that, okay, I get the job, I have more opportunity now to okay, I have my job, I'm learning environments. I can also now use my my free time to get back into characters and maybe expand what I want to be as an artist. And so if you like everything, you still have time, I think a lot of artists, there's a lot of pressure in the beginning to get that first job, and there is definitely a lot, but you can always over time introduce another field. I've seen people kind of switch later on. It happens.
Yeah.
You can always do it that road too.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I did. I started out with environments.
Yeah.
Yeah. I started out doing environments for COD. I mean, by the way, for everybody, I don't like doing environments.
He wants to get hired for environments, everyone. So if you want to hire him, no.
I don't mind. I don't like hate it, right? Like I did it for a while, so I don't absolutely hate it, right? I just prefer other stuff to it. Let's just say I prefer characters, other things to it. But yeah, I don't know why I cut in on that. Anyways, keep going. What were you saying? I forgot what you were saying.
I think I just wrapped up about being a generalist.
Oh, being a generalist.
It's just like there's pros and cons to it.
Yeah.
You know, try to assess your situation. Try to view it as like a bandwidth thing, like bandwidth of your time. It really is about the time and where you're at. There are some people who there's a few people went into the intensive program. They're already quite good at all the things. So for them, they just need to level up everything equally, and they were really good at, let's say, characters and environments. But that's not most people, and it's fine if you're not that person.
That was like two, maybe three people.
Yeah,
that was like that already had a really good level going into the program. Everybody else, you kind of had to pick a lane.
Yeah, you pick a lane, and it's not a bad thing. It's just like you have to kind of understand where you're at, and that's fine.
And you're usually picking two lanes, by the way. Like we've said before, if you're doing environments, you're doing environments and props. If you're doing characters, you're doing characters and props. Like you're usually doing two lanes because you have to do props regardless for those two things. Creature, again, kind of the weird one out. You don't always have to do props for creatures unless we're talking about like mechanical creatures. And then maybe the prop person does nuance. That. It gets like really weird.
Yeah, usually creature. I would say like the last thing we can wrap maybe is like niche, where it's like you find like a really weird angle, and now you're like this specialist, like this specialist. Yeah,
you're the only one on the planet that does it. Lamps.
Yeah, you're like the best at that thing. So like every company knows that that's designer. Your thing. Yeah, exactly. The lamp designer. Maybe Effie will be in lamp designer. Our friend who loves lamps.
Lamp designer. Oh, you need lamps for your game? Call this person.
Yeah, I got you. It's gonna be lit. Get it? Anyways,
but yeah, like niche stuff. Yeah. Go ahead. You were talking about niche stuff.
Yeah, sometimes you can kind of find a unique lane in as someone who delivers a service. Like you could be exceptional at like guns or exceptional at vehicles.
Yeah,
and like your portfolio is literally just that. Yeah. And
a specialty within a specialty usually.
Exactly. Yeah. And so you just kind of find work for that because you're just so exceptional at that one thing. Yeah. Again, it has its pros and cons. Usually not out of the gate. I would recommend doing that.
Nope.
But it exists. Like there's people that's like, I just do horror creatures. Sometimes happens. And if you're so damn good at it, then all the companies know you exist and they'll come to you eventually. You'll have enough work. But yeah.
Thought of another creature person. I just can't remember their name. It's the person who did the creatures for Evolve. I'm drawing a blank of their name.
Me neither.
They're really Scott something.
Scott.
Still look at the name, but yeah, it's another really good creature designer.
Cool.
But yeah, there's like those niches, and again, the creature one you can chase if you really, really love creatures. Like the positions exist. I'll be honest. I personally haven't like worked with a ton of creature concept artists. Like there isn't always a need for it at studios. But there are studios that do need it. It's niche, but like if that's what you love and that's all you want to do, like don't listen to us. Like do what you like. Like
do what you like, but also know that the realistic strategy behind it too. Like be aware of both.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, we just approached the 2 hour 17 mark. You want to jump into the
we can quickly cover the artists we were going to show today.
Sure.
Let's do that, and then we'll wrap up.
We'll ramp it up. So yeah, we're entering the visual section of the podcast. So for all you listeners, we're going to put some images up.
Yeah. So we'll try to talk about it a bit.
Yeah.
Let's just look at maybe like just a few super quick. We'll show them all and then talk about it.
Yeah. Who gets to start?
Guess you get to start.
Yeah. Can't wait. This artist is a very underrated, unknown artist.
Old school.
Yeah,
We
man.
went old school.
Oh,
Okay.
definitely. This artist, I remember finding, I don't know, it was a little while ago, maybe like 6-7 years ago.
What's their name?
Walter Everett.
Walter Everett.
He is dead. I don't know why I had to say it like that.
I don't know. Why you
He
have to
was a
say-
golden age illustrator back in the day. He was born in 1880, died in 1946.
There was no Photoshop at that time.
Nope.
Nope.
There was I don't know if he made it to color TV, but he didn't need one because his colors are amazing.
Insane.
Yes. So looking at the first one, it's a bit blurry, but it's hard to find really good high resolution images of this guy. It's tricky. He's so good, but for some reason people don't care about him. I don't understand. He's so good though. So Walter Everett was a student of Howard Pyle. Howard Pyle is known as one of the I think he was known as the grandfather of illustration. So he was one of those guys that took illustration to the next level, especially in the Golden Age. And he had an influence on a ton of the Golden Age illustrators at the time. And for all you that don't know what Golden Age is, Golden Age illustrators, it's like a period of the 90s where like basically like illustrators were kind
1890s?
Huh?
1890s.
1900s.
1900.
I think it's like late 1800s, 1900s, I think. Could be wrong, but there's a group of artists around that era.
Because you said 90s. Usually 90s is like 1990s.
1900s. Sorry, guys. 1900s. Where, so basically this time period had, there was a time where basically illustration was at a very peak where, you know, the illustrators were illustrating for all the big companies and it shows in the work, like the illustration quality was super, super high.
Yeah.
They were being paid millions of dollars. I think like it was really, really a luxurious time to be an illustrator. And so
damn, we don't get paid millions.
I think it was being called the Golden Age because, man, like it really hit a high point quality wise. Like you had guys like, you know, Sargent, Leyendecker, all these kind of guys who I really hope you guys should check out.
We'll show them.
We'll show them. Yeah. Maybe we could do a Golden Age episode. That'd be great.
But it's gonna be mostly you talking because I actually don't know a lot. I'm really bad with my art history. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, we can maybe do a little crash course on it.
Get a guest with you.
Oh, I have some. That'd be great actually.
Yeah, that would be good.
So Walter Everett is a student of one of the the guys who pioneered just like the illustrative look of the looks of like Dean Cornwell. It was Howard Pyle, like Dean Cornwell, all these guys. A very Golden Age look. It's like the Golden Age look, basically. And this guy I really like because there is something about the composition, the very, very beautiful mark making and shapes.
Yep.
Like if you look at the first one, man, it's so opaque. Like all the tones are so thick. There's not a lot of like gradients. And
even
it's
that
almost
second one with the tree, like the tree has like 3 different values and that's it.
Yeah, like the relationship between like realism and almost like this very posterized, expressive, illustrative style, he mixes so well. I think the second one captured it the most, like this one that we're gonna have up front, where it's really about the beauty of the composition and how the shapes are arranged on the space. It's almost like calligraphy of value. So this artist had just such an elegant way of using all those fundamentals really, really well. I also loved the flat tones, but also the subtle gradients of a form, which is in the third one. If you're looking at the third ones,
I don't think we're allowed to show that on YouTube.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, let's not do that.
I'd have to double check, but I don't think we're allowed to show that.
So let's go to the fourth one.
Okay.
So this one right here. There's such a nice kind of, balance of very illustrative, very abstract, almost like abstract art. If you look at like the foliage around and even the bottom, it's like sketchy. It's very energetic, loose, almost like something, very abstract that you can put on your wall. And then if you go to the main focus, you have these hits of more realized, fleshed out, more information that really gives this nice balance to the picture. And I find it really, really beautiful as an illustrator, just having a nice balance between loose and realistic.
Yeah.
I love it. Last two. Actually, let's go to the last one. This one, when I saw it, I was like blown away. So the black and white one, this one's like almost like a landscape format vista. Man, for me, this is the perfect balance of extremely like well-designed composition, very readable, but also has like this such a high fidelity of realism, and he just melds the two so well where like you squint and it feels like this epic moment of like this moody glimpse into what it was like maybe back then, you know, with the, you know, people in these costumes, that kind of stuff. Maybe it's like an orphanage or something like that. But when you start looking closer, it's like the mark making, the shapes, all those kind of things are just expressed so beautifully. It's like, honestly, this artist needs to be known more. It's so underrated. Like most people I talk to don't know him. I don't know why he's amongst like maybe the, you know, the Leyendecker Sargents.
Yeah.
So,
I know him because you talk about him.
Yeah, I definitely have.
Yeah. I mean, his stuff's nuts. Like,
yeah, you can see
it's insane.
Yeah, you can see the blue one with the, you know, the two characters. They're kind of, you know, they have this moment. Maybe they're having a bad day or something like that. But
and that's something people like kind of forget. They always look at the artists right now on ArtStation, but there's like a ton of artists that are not on ArtStation, that are not alive anymore, that are insane, that you can learn from as well. It's not just
100%.
artists that are alive now. Like there's artists that are dead that are just really good at what they did, especially illustration. If you like illustrations, go look at the master painters.
Go look at the Golden Age illustrators specifically.
Yeah.
They're insane. This guy is awesome. Yeah, so that's the artist I'd like to share.
Yeah, I think that's a really good pick. You want to go on to mine super quick?
Sure.
I don't think we have much time left. How much time do we have left?
Got like 20 minutes.
Oh, okay. Oh, man, we're good. My thing had said 5 minutes.
Yeah, we've got like an extra 15 after your alarm goes
Sure.
off.
Let me pause. Oh, actually, it cannot be edited. We're gonna have a little ring midway. Cool. So I picked. I'm not gonna pronounce the last name correctly, but Cedric Payravernay. I did not say that right, but yeah. So there's a few artists that worked on work at Arkane Studios that worked on the game Dishonored. We'll probably see the other ones at some point. I'll probably mention them, like Sergey and Fred August. Really love their stuff as well. But this is one of them that worked on Dishonored, worked on Deathloop as well. Really, really good illustrator, really good with shapes. The brushstrokes are like really gorgeous in his work. You look at the first image, like you can see the mark making, like we were just talking about mark making before. It like has this really cool like texture to it. Like you really see all these brushstrokes. It's like very rendered when you zoom out, but when you zoom in, like there's just so much kind of like juiciness to these brushstrokes. I'm sure you've seen his stuff before.
Yeah, of course.
And like he's pretty well known. Very nuts. I mean, he does a lot of faces as well. He did like characters for Love, Death, and Robots as well. So really, really good. You go on to the next page, another illustration. Again, just like beautiful shapes, beautiful colors. Everything reads super well, like the light and darks, the shadow shapes. Everything is just like super clear. Nothing is like unreadable. And everything, the information is simplified where it like needs to be. It's not like overly treated if it doesn't need to be overly kind of like rendered. So
yeah,
I love his stuff. Really, really good stuff. Also showed the last two, it's kind of like showing some of that concept art that he does as well, especially the last one showing like some of the design work that he does. So this person's a concept artist, even though he does a lot of illustration on his ArtStation, he does do concept art. So really good understanding of how things work. And again, that knowledge of shapes that he does when painting and illustrating really comes out in the shapes of his design. Like they're nuts. They're really, really nice.
They're insane.
So this is like an enemy type in Dishonored that you've probably seen. They're like on these giant like stilettos or like whatever they're called, those things, those like long legs that you stand on, and they have like little floating shields around them and stuff that are like, attached to piston arms. Super cool. Really, really cool. Yeah, the design is so sick for this. Again, if you haven't played Dishonored or haven't looked at the art book for Dishonored,
at least look at the art.
Yeah, like it's insane.
It's an easy win.
It's insane the stuff that they've done. So please look at the stuff for Dishonored 1, Dishonored 2. Look at the stuff for Prey. Look at the stuff for Deathloop. Stuff is nuts.
It's got a specific aesthetic to it, which I really like.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's a lot of it is the shapes, but I'm noticing how like there's a careful stylization to
Yes.
certain shapes, especially like specular area. You
Yeah.
have like this zigzag sort of like
Yeah.
shard like shape that shows
Yeah.
up a lot. There's a lot of these angles
Yeah.
that they kind of try to put in there.
Because speculars are not just like a perfect kind of shape, right? Because there's like that roughness to materials, wear and tear, and all the stuff that affects the shape of the specular. And he shows that super well with like a brush stroke to show that
Yeah.
randomness, that unevenness. Like it's like very effortlessly, just in one mark, he can make that be seen.
Yeah, and it's cool how like you don't have to conform to like a very, I don't know, realistic shape for a specular. Like I like how, you know, the first image, like the guy's nose specular.
Yeah.
It's like a zigzag, super cool designed lightning bolt kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it just adds so much personality. And I feel like like a lot of the artists, you know, who work with the Arkane studio, they have that sensibility for shape, and it really, really, man, it's such a cool look.
Yeah. And then you have like that third piece as well with the faces. We talked a bit about faces today, but like, even though there's like a set structure to like the anatomy of the face, he's able to kind of like use that as a springboard and have all these characters that just look so distinctly different from a shape. If you were to silhouette these out, they all kind of stand and have their own personality. Maybe one of them is tougher. Maybe one of them, the silhouette is somebody who's older, or maybe more of a scholar type. Like you can tell these things by just the shapes that he's using, and he's really able to show like a wide range and just like the faces alone and the head shapes.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is super cool.
There's such a cool play with proportion.
Yeah.
Especially like I'm noticing how they're not afraid of exaggerating things.
Yeah.
Especially like the shape of, let's say, you know, the fourth dude. It's like he has such a thick base of his chin. It's like they really push it out. Yeah. They play with like the size of the ears versus the size of the eyes. Like notice how small the eyes are in the fourth character.
Yeah.
I love that expressive nature of it. It's where when you look at it, you're like, oh, there's something a bit different about that. It's like there's some very unique kind of I don't know, play with shape and proportion that pushes the boundary of what you're used to expecting.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. So yeah, if you're not familiar with this artist, please check their stuff out. Really, really good. Fantastic. Look at Dishonored. Look at these games made by Arkane Studio. Specifically the one in Lyon, I think, is the one where our Dishonored, Prey, and Deathloop were all made. So yeah, really, really awesome stuff by Cedric. Somebody I've looked at a lot. Even though I don't do a lot of illustrative stuff, there's a wealth of knowledge to learn from this. So like really, really cool stuff.
Yeah, if you love this stuff, study it. It's a great wealth of knowledge.
Yeah. Awesome. So I think that's pretty much it. That's episode 3, everybody. I think we should probably stop saying numbers in case we release them in a different order. But yeah, this is the third
official
filmed.
Long one.
Yeah, third one that we filmed. Yeah, please, again, like if there's artists that you like that you want us to kind of cover, please let us know. Let us know how you went in your route for education. Like if you've already you're in that currently, what did you pick? Did you decide to be like a character person, more environment focused?
Yeah, tell us how you figured it out. Like, you know, it's a big question.
Share that knowledge with everybody and give us ideas as well. If there's a topic you want us to talk about, like, you know, let us know in the comments, because we have a lot of topics lined out, but we're always looking for more things to plan out over the year and what we're going to talk about. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's today's episode of the Juicy Brush podcast.
Yeah. Thank you for tuning in, guys.
Thank you for tuning in, and take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.